Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is June the 2nd. You guys never know when you're going to actually play a role in this show. And so this is a shameless plug, I suppose, for the live chat that comes in on the mornings as we get started. If you've never joined our live chat, you're missing out. It starts at 9:30 Eastern time. It's 8:30 in the Central Time Zone, Texas, and so on. And I see you guys rolling out there and talking, and sometimes I'm a little bit late to the show because I get bogged down in some rabbit hole. I went down this rabbit hole about amnesty today, and I wanted to make sure that I had the evidence that I wanted to share with you guys about it. So I went and took my time, and I got that. And so here we are rolling a few minutes behind schedule. There was not a tracksuit emergency. Going back to my point about the chat, I saw a couple of quick questions. Hey, was there a problem? No, we got several tracksuits now, including one from one of our listeners. You know who you are. And it's appreciated. It's totally unnecessary. But the idea that people want to send my children tracksuits, or specifically my son, a tracksuit so that he could wear it, which, by the way, we were at where were we? We were at like an Academy Sports the other day. And my 5-year-old walks up to some random lady and kind of like, gets her attention. And she's like, "Oh, how are you, young man?" Like, I don't know how old she was, 60s, 70s. And he's super cute. So he gets everyone's attention. And he goes, "Do you see all those tracksuits over there?" It's like, it doesn't matter who he encounters. He will engage you about his preferred outfit, what he believes is probably the most functional item of clothing that you can own. It's not actually functional, it turns out, in Texas, America, where it's 90 degrees and humid outside. Wearing a polyester tracksuit, not a great plan, but it is my 5-year-old's plan. And he's really committed to it. You have to respect the dedication to the Russian gangster / I don't know, Ukrainian club goer vibe that my child has cultivated. It's very keen to his identity. He'll wear it to bed and so on. Anyway, that's not what kept me late. What kept me going is there are 3 major stories that I want to cover. Number one is a ongoing info operation that is happening. It's the Trump administration, I think, trying to get back in the good graces of people who are really irritated with the differential between what the man promised and what the man has become. And so we're seeing a couple of people comment on it in the public space. And then on top of that, we're seeing this story that came out of Axios. It was the breaking news of yesterday afternoon. Donald Trump tells Netanyahu, "You're effing crazy." And he has a tough guy talk about it. And he gets it, he really put the screws to Bibi Netanyahu, which is what Americans want to see, because you got to assert that you're your own man and you're not getting, dog walked around, as Dan Bongino and some others have been like, "You think that Donald Trump is getting dog walked?" Yes, that is the pervasive attitude that a lot of people who are either independent voters or Republicans who are disillusioned with a lack of action on the most incredibly important things that needed to be done. Number one, by the way, is still election security. There is no movement on election security in this country, not in a national way. And certainly not in a way that would convince me that November is going to be an election and not whatever that we normally get. So we've got this problem. Donald Trump has an image problem and a messaging problem. And so he's decided to kind of push this. I'm going to take a breath. Fox News is claiming strength. Axios shared from an Israeli reporter that Donald Trump stood up to this tiny little country with 9 million people in the Middle East. And we're supposed to believe that. I don't think that's what's going on. I don't think that's what's going on at all. I think what we have is an information op that is classic MAGA slop. It's like, look how tough our guy is. He said the F word. I'll show you. And then I'll tell you kind of what I think is going on there. On a different note, we've got the sort of Temu Trump, the dollar store Donald of Kash Patel and his girlfriend. They decided to sue MSNBC, MS Now, and Ken Delanian and Carol Leonig, who wrote a piece in, I think, November or December. We'll go into the piece of what that was, talking about a protection detail for the FBI director's girlfriend. Yeah, we are doing this again. And Maybe something that I haven't seen commented on by anybody else, but I'm going to share what I think is wild. I've got the lawsuit in front of us here, so we'll go through the lawsuit. That's obviously going to be something interesting to me as someone who's also dealing with a lawsuit from them. You don't have to like Fusion Ken, as you guys are talking about in the chats. You don't have to like the guy to recognize that this is a garbage lawsuit, and it's garbage on its face, and it's garbage because of the actual lawsuit itself, as it is internally conflicted, and then the reality of who the person is that is suing. Also, I guess they're making the claim in the lawsuit that everything about her is fake. I don't know how you make that argument and think that it lands positively, but we'll go through some of these funny things about the country music sensation who also sues people on the side as a semi-professional sort of enterprise. And then let's see if there's anything. Lastly, amnesty. I think that we are seeing a movement towards amnesty. There was a kind of a really awful press conference that the DHS secretary gave, and Mark Wayne Mullen, the former senator from Oklahoma, who's now turned DHS secretary, who seems like he's gotten into the job specifically to be the soft version of what the Trump administration promised, kind of a sloppy letdown, if you will. We're going to get something closer to amnesty than not. And I've got a bunch of clips that are entitled Amnesty. And the scapegoat went on and sort of, he discounted the value and the voice of Greg Bovino, who was the commander at large for the Border Patrol that was behind all of the really big pushes early on in the Trump administration that I think people were cheering on. And he said some really disrespectful stuff about him yesterday, so we'll cover that as well. So those are kind of the three major topics, and we'll get into those in 1 second. Let's just start with this. There's me interviewing the CEO, I think, or the founder, Aaron, at SilentSLNT.com/KYLE. If you guys go to silent.com, you're going to check out the one that I would recommend is the E3 Everyday Fair Day Backpack. Check that out. But let's face it, the phone that you carry is a tracking device. It's a tracking device for government and for big tech and for data brokers, corporates, etc. Cyber criminals, take your pick. People will try to hack you. They'll try to figure out what you're doing. You're constantly leaving this digital footprint wherever you go. You have signals coming out of every wireless device you have, whether it be a phone or a tablet, and even your laptops, that are pinging sometimes when the battery's even, off, when it's turned off. And you're sending cellular and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, near-field communications. You're being bathed in all of these sort of radio frequencies. And the one way that you can stop those things is using a Faraday bag. Silent makes Faraday gear that blocks all of these things. If you have no signal, that means they're not tracking you, whoever they is. You're not going to have remote access. People can't hack into it. And you're not going to have breadcrumbs leaving like where you've been for people who want to look into it after the fact. With my name, Kyle, you'll save 15% on the Faraday stuff that they make. SLNT.com/KYLE will take you to the landing page. We've got one on the desk here that I constantly use. This is their probably least expensive option. It's very nice. It's incredibly durable, and it gives you sort of two options for pockets. You've got a pocket on the inside here for keeping things that don't need to be Faraday safe. Maybe you just want them shielded from your body. And then on the inside is actually the sealed up Faraday part of it that does not leak, which is the problem with most of the Chinese garbage that you get. This has my phone in it currently because I don't like my phone to ring while I'm doing the podcast. I've also got another one over here that came with the dry bag, and I use this all the time as well. This actually has my work phone in it, which is the Kyle Seraphin Show phone. It goes in this dry bag here, which is both waterproof. It's a roll top. It has no leaks in it as well, not just for air. I mean, not just for RF, but also for air. And so you can use this sucker to carry around. I've used it while camping. I've used it while not camping, while hiking, kayaking, etc., hanging out with my family. Super nice options. They make good stuff. They make durable stuff. They make things for the military, special operations, and so on. If you guys want to protect your family, your freedom, maybe your peace of mind as well, check out Silent, SLNT.com/KYLE. Get off the grid, go silent, be invisible to the outside world, take protection, take your kind of data into your own hands if you are so inclined. I don't think you'd be disappointed. They make good stuff. I had somebody on X tagging me and saying, a cat peed in my bag for my laptop. It's time for a new Silent. And I'm like, yeah, I'm also looking for a new Silent bag. I need a smaller one for my wife, who is not very big. Let's do today's program. We're going to dive into it right now. So I was trying to figure out how we wanted to organize today's program. And I think what we'll do is we'll start with the lead story, which is the "you're effing crazy" bit from Donald Trump first. This is Axios. And let's do a little quick sort of discussion on Axios. One of the interesting things about that outlet in general, I guess, is that Axios seems to be a preferred leaking ground for a lot of stories that the White House wants you to have access to. And they want to do it in a very specific way, I guess. You remember that the closing of the Epstein files came out of Axios. That's the one that I can't get out of my brain. In the middle of a Texas flood coming up on a year ago, we're right on the edge of it, maybe 11 months, where they decided to try to hide that they were closing the Epstein files. They handed it off to the folks over at Axios to report on it, thinking that on a Sunday night, nobody would be paying attention. And I played you some stuff from Axios yesterday where they were kind of trying to explain away what was going on. What I didn't hear was people not living up to expectations. Remember, there are three major components to disillusionment in America per the Axios story we did yesterday and the three-part video series that I kind of shared with you. Number one was that social media exists, new media. Number two was that we had COVID. These are all sort of like natural phenomenons or technological phenomenons. There's no person involved. And then the last one is that politics has become sort of a blood sport. And so there are tectonic shifts in the way that we talk about things and that we consume information and what it means to every person. What I didn't hear was like people not being truthful and honest, that people are attempting to shade your opinion and trying to make you think things by presentation. And we're not just talking about editorial bias. We're talking about the bias of who says what, when, where, why, and how. The background and sort of the anatomy of these info operations are, can they come out from a credible source? Will they be picked up with enough velocity that they make it to your ears? Will they reach a critical mass of people so that it becomes a trending topic for whatever period of time that it needs to be there? Axios is running this story, and it made critical mass right away. I'll show you the story here. This is the lead story that they had yesterday, and it's still something that's being discussed in ABC News and New York Times, etc. And this is all about the Iran war. You're effing crazy. Apparently they decided to spell it out. Also, this is kind of an interesting thing. I occasionally let my emotions get away from me, and I'll use swear words, and I try not to as often as possible because I just don't think it's particularly helpful for what we're doing here. But what's interesting is to see when a news article doesn't change the way that something is spelled, that doesn't try to fill in a blank or doesn't leave asterisks in place of letters and so on. When they just spell it out, it's something that I've seen change in my lifetime, where it's acceptable to have swear words. It's acceptable to get, nastier and maybe more vulgar expressions in true and real news, including from our politicians, right? And we're seeing that more and more. It's kind of it's maybe the pedestrianization of news and politics, but I guess that's inevitable when you're in this. All right, so you're effing crazy. Donald Trump is fuming at Netanyahu in a phone call talking about what happens in Lebanon, allegedly. Well, what we're supposed to believe is that we've got an American president on the phone with the Israeli prime minister and telling him exactly what's going on. He's giving him, the double barrel business. The story goes like this. Donald Trump lashed out at the Israeli prime minister over Israel's escalation in Lebanon in an expletive-laden phone call on Monday. 2 U.S. officials and a third source briefed on the call told Axios. Now, this is an official leak. This was done, I would suggest to you, at the request of the White House. This was shared on purpose. The people who actually shared it, the people writing the story, one is Mark Caputo. He tends to have very good sourcing. The other one is Barak Ravid, who does political coverage from Israel. And I don't think this is like nobody knew that anyone would find out about this thing, and Donald Trump is shocked to find out that his call leaked. No, I think they were like, hey, go tell people that this call happened and that Donald Trump was very, very tough. He was super mean. This is the red meat that you need to try to make your base feel like the guy is doing the thing you want, that you haven't lost complete grip in reality. And here's the reason why I suspect. I'm going to play you a Rich Barish discussion with Robert Barnes from came up in my feed yesterday. But it's the reason behind this kind of tough guy talking. You need to have people change the image that Donald Trump is being dog walked. You've already tried it with Daniel Bongino going out and saying, what do you think this guy's being dog walk around? He doesn't get dog walk around. Trust me, bro. I know, I worked in the administration. Donald Trump is the alpha dog, but nobody sees him that way. that's paying attention to the actions that he's doing. It looks like he's getting dragged into things that he didn't necessarily mean to. It means that we think that he's getting briefed on intel that may be not the same thing our intel agencies are saying. We had Joe Kent leave. We had Tulsi Gabbard leave. People that were actually, as far as I could tell, interested in the mission of reform as Donald Trump was elected to go do. So here's why Axios says it matters. Earlier on Monday, Iran threatened to abandon the negotiations with the United States over Israel's action in Lebanon. Okay, now you have a reason for action. On the call, Trump called Netanyahu crazy and accused him of ingratitude. This is sort of mouthing the sentiment that a lot of Americans have, is that Israel is ungrateful for the efforts that the United States puts in, not to mention the significant amounts of foreign aid, the military backing, that there is no Israel without the United States standing and keeping track of it. Now, I don't know if Israel can stand on its own 2 feet without military action threatened by the United States behind it, but I suspect that it cannot. It certainly can't stand in the way that it does right now. It's it's the terrier that's picking a fight with the bigger dogs, or even a pack of dogs, knowing that it has a Rottweiler standing behind it that's on its team, or has a Doberman, or take your pick, whatever it may be. I actually had a terrier. It was very much like this. I used to call her an Israeli terrier. We had a little dog named Lily. It was a shitty little dog, by the way. But we had this little dog, came from my parents' house, street dog, never really made it to be a decent animal in like, polite society kind of thing. Was always kind of yippy and yappy, small, super aggressive, very tough, would easily go and fight something 3 times her size. She eventually decided to do the one thing she should never do, which is that she bit my daughter in the face, and I gave her 8 hours to live. We actually ended up sending her off to Valhalla. She went to a house with like 3 40-pound cats that I assume she'd be fighting for eternity. But this dog was always really, really tough and yappy. And she was even tougher when my German Shepherd stood behind her. And that's kind of how I think a lot of Americans kind of see how Israel looks in this setting. It's very tough as long as the United States is backing it with the entire arsenal of the United States and the authority that the United States commands globally. So here's what you got to do. You've got to make sure that the American president looks like he's not being led around by this other guy, Bibi Netanyahu. So what do? Well, you accuse him of being crazy. You say he's ungrateful. You'd say, if not for you, if not for me, you're in prison. You're only out there because of me, like that kind of thing. So summarizing Trump's remarks to Bibi Netanyahu, the U.S. official said, quote, "You're effing crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this being the ongoing incursions into Lebanon." Okay. Second source said that Donald Trump was pissed and at one point yelled at Netanyahu, "What the F are you doing?" So all of this sounds very staged. It sounds very performative. It sounds like you've got Donald Trump out there striking back and sharing the sentiment of a lot of Americans. The problem is, I don't think it's believable. I don't think it's real. And the outlet, to me, coming from Axios and to the people that it's going to, including an Israeli reporter or a whatever Jewish American reporter, I'll have to look into this guy's story back again. Here, maybe we click on him. Oh, Axios refuses to connect to. I've got a link to that guy's name and it doesn't want to pull up. So I'll look into it again, so I'm not mistaken here. But I know what he does cover, and what he covers is Israeli politicians, U.S.-Israel relations, etc. That screams op to me, and maybe it does to you. And here's the reason why you need that op. Here is Barish and Barnes talking, kind of freewheeling on the lack of respect that Donald Trump has cultivated.
Tell him the truth. That's what it comes to. That's what it cocomes down to. I don't know why you would expect me to say anything but the truth. And I just like, you know what? And I tweeted it for a reason. I was tweeting publicly what my takeaway was, which is that a big problem with this White House is that nobody has the balls to tell Donald Trump that the country right now thinks that he's Israel's bitch. He looks like a pussy. All right. And I know my wife hates that word, but there's no other way to put it. I'm talking like a real American right now. The president looks weak. He looks like he's Bibi's bitch. That's what the country thinks of him. So come out and try to say something like, "Oh, but we forced them to get into a new ceasefire, to observe a new ceasefire." You mean because they broke the last one? You mean because they sabotaged the last peace process? Again, like the country views you as just being walked around on a leash by Bibi like a bitch. That's what it is. And that's like, so this whole Epstein class narrative, man, it's so brilliant because it encompasses the cost of living issues and challenges that Americans are facing. I mean, it's like, hey, there's this group of people, by the way, Trump's.
That's really funny. If those of you who are just looking at the screen and wondering like, hey, is there someone at my front door because somebody's on my Ring camera? Apparently this was a screen grab that somebody did. They screen grabbed the Ring camera on there. I heard that last night and I was like, I don't even have my ringer on. Who the hell's at my front door? Oh, how funny. Okay, we're going to continue on. Hopefully this not fantastic screen grab doesn't have any more of those.
Protecting them. He did protect them. And they are killing you. You can't live and you can't make ends meet because of these guys, you know? And the worst part about it is that Democrats are knee deep in it too, but it doesn't matter. It's brilliant. They got it. They have the upper hand with the American public now in this narrative. And then it also explains the inexplicable. No, excuse me. The inexplicable, which is, and again, I tried to explain this to them. Donald Trump was viewed as a strong, decisive, independent leader. That's what he was viewed at. And now the American voter is like, what happened to him? The only way it makes sense to them is that, well, you got him. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the only way it makes sense to the American public. And
this clip goes on for about 4 more minutes. I think I actually will post it over on our local so you guys can listen to it. And I'll definitely make sure that it's reshared over on the X timeline if you guys are interested in seeing it there. Really, really solid analysis of it. There's a few things that people can't figure out. What happened to the Donald Trump that I thought I voted for? Where is this guy who promised 20 things to the American people, including kind of like a real hard ass on immigration, a hard ass about deportations? There was not going to be any sort of amnesty. There wasn't going to be any softness there. There was no mercy. This is the American people saying, hey, enough is enough. We've played nice for as long as possible. We're putting in the wrecking ball, and the wrecking ball has the face of like silly blonde hair and an 80s billionaire playboy who's going to tell everyone to go F yourself. This goes back to a long sort of statement that I made, or a long sort of supposition I had. What is the purpose of having FU money if you don't know when to say FU? And people believe that they were getting FU Donald Trump. They said, the guy says, screw you. He's not polite. He's not nice. He's not even articulate half the time. He just rambles on whatever he thinks. And he's going to do the thing that I would do, which is go break things, because that's what needs to be done. Drain the swamp, break the system, fight the status quo, get rid of all the people that need to be gotten rid of, tell people like Bibi Netanyahu to go F yourself if that's what needs to be done. And then people have this problem. And Barish is pointing out exactly what it is. He says, how do people reconcile? We voted for this guy, and he's nothing like this guy. We voted for Donald Trump, who's going to essentially do things like Thomas Massey talks about. We're going to make government smaller. We're going to try to make it more free. We're going to get money out of politics, and I don't need your money because I have it. To a guy who says, Miriam Adelson gave me $250 million, and that buys you a lot of credibility, and she cares about Israel first. And so how could that be? And by the way, we're going to get transparency on pedophiles and Epstein Island and all this other stuff. And then you turn around and they leak something to Axios. They try to close it in the middle of the night. And then a couple of weeks later, he's like, Jeffrey Epstein, are we still talking about this guy? And so the game is, and I tend to agree that it is the way that you're going to think about it. You're like, how on earth did they get this guy to do it? They must have videos of him doing something awful, that he's part of the Epstein class. The idea that the Epstein administration as a term is offensive to the Trump administration, it should be. And this was the worst PR nightmare that was self-inflicted, and I talked about it with Alex Jones a year ago. It's like, it's the worst thing you could ever do. Just give them transparency. Whatever it looks like, it can't be worse than what you're making yourself look like. But what you've done is you've excused every single person who's looking for an understanding, like, what happened to this guy? Oh, the only explanation is that a country has him led around by the nose, or an intelligence service has him led around by the nose, whether it be ours, whether it be the other Five Eyes, whether it be Israel's, or so on. Somebody has something on this man that is leverage, and he has no choice but to do whatever they say. That's how people have mentally rationalized. How did you lose Donald Trump? He was so good saying the thing, even if he wasn't clean about it, or even if he wasn't polished. That was kind of the charm. People were like, yeah, he's not a politician. Well, he is a politician. He's been doing it for over a decade. So you're a politician at that point. But that's the pitch. A non-politician goes to Washington and he wrecks shop, and he wrecks shop because he's coming from the outside. He doesn't need your money, and he doesn't need anything. And you can't say anything worse about Donald Trump that people have already said about Donald Trump, or Donald Trump has said about Donald Trump. That would be the belief, right up until it doesn't work. So what do you do with that? Everyone's asking that same question, and I think that the op of him standing up to Bibi Netanyahu is exactly the attempt to try to rein in some of that. They don't need to rein it in for everybody. There are plenty of people that are super excited about what's going on right now because they will never open their eyes wide enough to see that maybe what the slop is that's being fed to them is an op. This is what an op looks like. If you're wondering, if you're a news station and you refer to another country as the enemy because you are literally like taking transcribed talking points from the political administration that's running the country, it's shameful. At some point, Jesse Waters won't be like, he's already starting to look, I feel it. Like, I'm starting to look a little bit older. I've got a little more gray in my beard. He's looking a little bit older every day. I think when you sell your soul, at some point, it's going to actually look that way to you. Jesse Waters doesn't look nearly as svelte or young as he did even a few years ago. Maybe a couple years worth of lying is taking its toll on him, or maybe he loves this stuff. I don't know. Anyway, here's some kamikaze dolphins for you.
Fox News alert, the Iranians just got the wind knocked out of them. Overnight, U.S. forces conducted airstrikes on multiple targets, hitting the enemy's radar and command and control centers. That came after the mullahs shot down one of our own drones, a $4 million Predator. Central Command says these strikes were defensive. Kuwait also in the crosshairs. The enemy fired off a barrage of missiles and drones into the country. 2 drones headed towards our airbase there. They were neutralized. Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, also feeling feisty this weekend. The terrorists launching over 50 rockets into Israel. This morning, Netanyahu ordered the IDF to strike the capital of Lebanon, Beirut, targeting Hezbollah strongholds in the vicinity. Israeli ground forces are also pushing into mainland Lebanon, capturing a 900-year-old medieval castle. Look at that.
Guys, it's 900 years old. Do you know how exciting it is to capture a castle that's 900 years old? Like, what does that have to do with anything? By the way, this footage was also shared by some Mossad hype groups that are on social media, letting people know how awesome the Israelis are for taking a piece of stone that stands on the side of a mountain in Lebanon.
This is their deepest military incursion into the country in over 25 years. Trump, not that happy about Israel. More on that in a sec. But the Iranians are calling this a ceasefire violation. And they said they were suspending negotiations and vowing to completely block the strait.
Oh,
POTUS
no.
says that's just a bluff. Writing on Truth that talks are continuing at a rapid pace. But if the talks are off, he couldn't care less. He told NBC, quote, "I think we've been talking too much, if you want to know the truth. I think going silent would be very good. And that could be for a long time." POTUS says that wouldn't mean more bombs. We'd just go silent and let the blockade work its magic. CENTCOM says the blockades turned around 121 ships. And U.S. officials tell the New York Times that...
I don't know if we're just watching a Department of War press release being read by an actor. That's what I think we just saw. So that's what Fox News has turned into. Completely uncritical, non-questioning, send us the talking points. I'm going to read the best case scenario. Look how tough Donald Trump sounds. We're in a talk, but if we didn't have a talk, I wouldn't even want to talk. You know why I wouldn't want to talk? Because I'm tired of talking. We've been talking too much. It's now the time for doing in the middle of a ceasefire where we're actually sending, like you started off by saying that the United States was striking and it was in response to, and of course it has to be self-defense, but it was self-defense because they shot down a Predator drone, but the Predator drone was shot down because it was in the place where it could be shot down. So we're poking and they're poking and they're shooting and we're shooting and it's totally a blockade. And we're going to shut down the strait. Open the strait, you crazy bastards, or whatever, right? Praise be to Allah. Isn't that what Donald Trump said on Easter? All this stuff kind of makes me sick. Here's NBC. Donald Trump cursed. That's way better than the other one from Axios. He cursed at Netanyahu in a phone call over Lebanon escalation, sources say. Yes, he accused him of being ungrateful. We need to make sure that people understand that Donald Trump understands that Americans are frustrated. I don't think Americans are just frustrated about Israel per se, although some people are certainly getting worked up about that. It's all of it. It's where are you on delivering the rest of the, like shutting down the border was like the opening remark. Then you got to do the rest of it. And right now we've got something that is going to be driving up fuel prices probably until the election. Even if they stopped this whatever military adventure or whatever we heard Dave Rubin call it the other day, if they stopped it today, we're still going to have high prices, and we're still going to have down the line consequences downstream from all the logistical stuff in the pipeline currently. The cost of feed, the cost of fertilizer, the cost of moving food, cost of raising animals, those things all get kicked down the line. All of this stuff is not going away, and it's certainly not going away by midterms. So you have your cover for action to be able to do whatever you need to do in the election. People were mad at Donald Trump. That's why they voted against MAGA party. That's why you had. How about there is no name? There's no reason for people who are independent to even think that this represents them at all. And there's a lot of people that are now moving, I would say, from the center right over to the right and just being like, look, dude, I gave you a shot. You're kind of a 90s Democrat. You're kind of a centrist. You kind of always have been. You're kind of squishy on the things that I think are really important culturally. And you've proven to me that you're even squishier than you would say. That's why we have people like the scapegoat, Mark Wayne Mullen, at DHS, instead of some real hard ass going in and just driving it and saying, we don't care what you say. We're not interested. By the way, we just had a court loss, because this is always how these things go. It's always press release, big push, and then loss in courts. A appeals court just overturned the transgender ban in the military that was implemented kind of like day one. That was a Pete Hegseth kind of initiative. So here's a kind of a podcast coming out of Austin. I can't remember what this one is called. This is two guys discussing sort of the problem with what happens when you lose your base. And Barnes and Barish were talking about it. Barris were talking about it. These guys are saying the exact same thing, and they're in a completely different age bracket. They're in a completely different sort of perspective.
And this is where it doesn't make sense to me, knowing Trump. You've told me this. I know this. Most people know this. Yeah. He follows the polls. He knows what's going on. He knows how people are responding to him. He's addicted to all of them. He likes to know how well he's doing. And his polls are record lows. Yeah. Literally the other day, he said, "Are you concerned about people's financial well-being or whatever?"
I don't think about it at all.
He doesn't think about it at all.
Insane.
But he's saying these things so blatantly. And I'm like, look, whether you like Trump or not, he got himself into office. He's a clever dude at times. He's smart. He's doing so many things that are operating so differently from the previous Trump term, I would even say.
Yep.
That make no sense in whatever way that you saw last time. You were like, my neighbor, this is actually a great story. I was going for a walk with my dog Cora, and my neighbor comes up, and he was pacing. And I was just like, "Hey, bro, Juan, what's going on?" Puerto Rican guy. And he just was ripped. He was like, "I need to talk to someone about this." And I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "I just retired 4 years ago. I just voted for this dumbass president," his words, "and gas is now up another $1. The stock market's out of control." He's like, "I'm about to have to go get another job. And I retired 5 years ago." And he's like, "I can't keep doing this. What the hell is he doing?" He's like, "I'm talking to my family. He's losing us. He's lost us at this point, honestly." Those were his words. And I'm like, damn, this is a guy that had an F Joe Biden flag flying around when I went down there. An F Joe Biden. And here he is, livid, pissed off. And I'm like, Trump, this is your base right here. This was a MAGA guy, not afraid to show how much he loves you. I think he had the hat at one point, wearing around MAGA hat.
Never was his base.
And now he's going against all those promises. And it's obvious we can be like, he's going against the promises, whatever. But knowing Trump for who he is, the fact he's doing so many things to anger his voter base, saying the sly comments of like, "I'm not concerned about the financial situations," or "the gas of oil, the barrel oil is not even that bad." It doesn't make any sense from the Trump we know.
So you got to figure out a way back. How do you get a way back? So that's Julian Dory's podcast. And, he's talking to this guy about a neighbor. This is a anecdotal type story. I think this is actually more common than people will see. I see it online all the time. It's everywhere. People making this comment. And then there's the defenders, the Jesse Waters watchers, and they defend it left and right. It doesn't matter if you defend it, if it's falling on deaf ears, if people are not willing to hear what you're saying. And if it sounds like your president is tone deaf, and more importantly, the guy that you voted for doesn't look anything like the guy that you got, and he's now trying to tack his way back into it. Of course he knows that it looks bad. He's got to understand that. And at some point, it's going to bother him, because that's what he is. Like, Donald Trump loves to be loved. He loves to be talked about in a positive way. So what do you do with that? Well, maybe you do an op saying how you were being really tough to the guy that you're still working with. By the way, did he stop the incursion into Lebanon? No. Did it stop the bombing campaign? Maybe a little bit, but they were still pressing in on foot. Like the ground campaign is still ongoing. So it stopped nothing. But we got the headline, and the headline is Donald Trump stands up to Netanyahu. Well, why would he even have to come close to doing that? We're talking about, again, this is the yappy terrier, and you're the big dog. Do you even need to do that? You shouldn't have to. There's a lot of people that are suffering financially. They're looking around and going, this is not what I voted for, because what I voted for was priority number 3, make America affordable again. And by the way, all the way down the line, if you keep going in the top 10, you find out that there's no new wars was something that people said. Where's the domestic agenda? Because that's what's going to make people feel good or bad about it. You can have all kinds of bombing campaigns in the Pacific and in the Caribbean. You can blow up drug boats and people won't get too up in arms one way or another about it. I don't think it's fantastic. But you're not going to hear me cry about it as long as like gas is $2 a gallon. People will be like, hey, he said he was going to deliver a cheaper economy. He said he was going to go out there and make sure that housing was affordable. He said he was going to go out there and do protectionism. He was going to protect American businesses, try and onshore manufacturing. He was going to make sure that we kept the native population inside the United States as the priority of the United States. You know, make America great again, make America for Americans again. Wouldn't that make sense? Can't do that with a bunch of H-1B visas. You can't do that with 600,000 Chinese citizens, and we need them so we can prop up the university system, which famously creates people who hate everything conservative. You can't get it. It's not real. But you can run an info op talking about how he was tough to Netanyahu. How about this? This is, we played this yesterday. This is Batya Ungar Sargon. By the way, let me just show you real quickly, since I brought it up previously. Barak Ravid is the journalist. He was half of the team. It was Ravid and Caputo that put out that Axios story. And I just wanted to confirm that I was correct. He's Israeli. He was born in Israel. And let's see, he served in the Israeli military, served in Signal. Son of a bitch. Are you serious? I didn't read this beforehand, but I should have. Okay, Ravid was born in the Israeli city of whatever. At 18, he was serving in the Israeli army, serving in signals intelligence in Unit 8200. Where have we heard 8200 before? Oh, yeah. Unit 8200 is essentially the Israeli military's version of the NSA. So that's where Mercer Strait came from, PragerU. This, you know, he was an intelligence operative, an intelligence whatever person. You can't make this stuff up. Anyway, now he's totally not doing. Now he's not doing intelligence stuff. They say that nobody's ever former CIA. I think yes and no. As someone who's former FBI, and I'm not at all associated with the FBI, but I know FBI people. I think the problem with a lot of these things is that folks will basically have a loyalty, and their credibility is staked on the credibility of their former agency. That's why you end up with CIA people who still back the CIA, unless their credibility is based on I called out the CIA. Right? This is the difference between me and maybe a lot of other people in the FBI space. My credibility is that I said there were problems in the FBI. I have no problem pointing out when the FBI is right, because it doesn't really hurt my feelings, because it is obviously right sometimes, and I've got friends there. I also am very happy to point out when it's wrong. It's actually it's my pleasure to do that. When you leave someplace and you feel like a loyalty towards a unit that you worked in, or a military, or whatever else, you know, there's a lot of people that love the Air Force. I had a mediocre experience in my Air Force, so I'm happy to point out when the Air Force is not great. In fact, it's my favorite thing, because I think a little bit of self-deprecation goes a long ways. But isn't that interesting? So there you go. The Israeli-based Israeli reporter who writes for Axios also just happened to be a guy who worked in the intelligence at 8200. So fine. Okay, so what's the effect of this? Did Donald Trump's like, you're effing crazy, you're going to prison without me, like there's not you, like that thing, did that work? Iran war update. Israel strikes southern Lebanon after pulling back from threat to Beirut. Under pressure from Donald Trump, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel held off attacking Beirut, but he vowed to continue the campaign against Hezbollah, which could threaten the peace talks with Iran. So they're going to just keep doing what they're doing. This is the New York Times reporting on this. So what did it stop? Like what stopped? Literally nothing. It goes on. We'll carry the rest of the story in a second. If you guys are watching on YouTube, give us a like. Same thing on Rumble. Like, subscribe to the channels if you haven't already. You may hear an ad from the audio platforms. That's coming from folks at Spotify, KyleSeraphinShow.com. And you guys can find that on any of the audios. But if you want video with it along and you want to read along with me while we got some of these stories up here and laugh about things and discover them before I read them out loud, join us over on Spotify. All right, Israel launched fresh strikes into southern Lebanon on Tuesday, hours after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel appeared to pull back from a threat of strike in Beirut, the nation's capital, which was because of pressure from Donald Trump and the United Nations. So there you go. Donald Trump has a real actual effect on Netanyahu. He's able to make him not strike Beirut, but not stop the invasion that he's doing anyway, and not stop the incursion into Lebanon, and not even stop the push. So there you have it. Inflation in the Eurozone hit high. This is talking about the cost of it. The cost is not just in the United States. And on that topic of cost, what do you do for the people that are a little bit upset about it? Because again, if you voted for no new wars, which call me crazy, but as a guy who signed up to serve in the military in the middle of 2009, that was when I stepped away from my previous life and joined my new life that I'm in now. I don't know, 20 years of war was enough for my generation. And a lot of guys like me. A lot of you that are listening right now, you're like, yeah, no new wars would be great. That'd be fine. No new disastrous pullouts of places that we were already holding on to, but no new wars would be fine. So what do? Costs are up. You can't stop the guy who's going to do whatever the hell he's going to do. We can't divorce ourselves from this group, apparently. The chat is all abuzz about Section 224 of the National Defense Authorization Act, which is a combination of some of the intelligence sharing capabilities of the United States military. It's not a fusion of our troops per se. It's not putting our troops under Israeli command, but it is giving them access to things that maybe they wouldn't have previously, or it's solidifying that partnership and it's doing it in writing. Tom Massey has called it out. People are saying that's a problem. So what do? You didn't vote for that per se. Maybe you could appeal for Donald Trump to give you money from the government. If there is, we talked about it yesterday, there is nothing that a communist will not use to do more communism. The solution to every government problem is more government and more government money. And problems caused by the government is more government money for people who didn't earn that money. That'd be great. Or maybe giving you back your own money and saying, aren't you grateful? It's so tiresome to me. And this is why I keep making the argument. There's two things that need to be said. Number one, the thing that they keep calling patriotism on Fox News is nostalgia for the past. A time when people actually said, hey, Republicans stand for smaller government. I don't know if they're going to get smaller government. They don't ever seem to do that. But that's what it stands for. That's what conservatism is about. It's like we want to get something closer to what it used to be like before the government grew exponentially, before 1913, before we had FDR come in and change the way that Americans look at their government. Less Marxism is preferable to people on the political right. Unless you just want like a pretty Israeli lady, American lady born in Philadelphia who went and studied in Israel. If you want this lady who wears a Star of David on her chest to tell you that we just need Donald Trump to give you more money from the government, that can't cause any problem. I feel like Joe Biden was pitching that same idea. This is what nice communism looks like on News Nation.
Is President Trump not hearing your message that your supporters are hurting?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I did it. I wanted to get past the politics of it all. You know, everybody's always talking about this as if it's like, well, does this mean the Democrats are going to win in the midterms or not? Can he still pull it? Like, I cannot stand when people who work all day are broke and lie awake all night wondering how they're going to pay for gas to get to work all day again. I just can't stand that. And so many of the president's supporters are working class. He won the working class. And these are the people who are struggling the most right now. And I just feel that he doesn't really understand it. He doesn't know it because, as you say, Elizabeth, his, team is so invested in making it seem like everything is okay. And I see this as somebody who fully supports the operation in Iran. That's why I suggested stimmy checks. I mean, we brought in $200 billion in tariff revenue. Give some of that to working class people to get them through the next 3 months. It's going to be a really hard summer, and these negotiations with Iran are going to take time. And I want him to do it right, and I think he can do it right. But it's not even about the political runway. Working class people who work so much harder than any of us are struggling, and I find that unbearable to think about.
The plight of the working class is so high that we need to have the government come and save them by giving them money from the government. We need stimmy checks. No excuse is ever bad enough. There's never a reason that it's bad to give government money out, right? That's the voice of conservatism, by the way. Regularly represents quote unquote right-wing politics on CNN. The op is gross. And for those of you who are arguing that she's pretty or not pretty, it's like that's what she's being presented. She's a soft, feminine voice saying things in a nice way, and it's empathetic, and she understands the plight of the working class. Like, what working class plight does she understand, do you think? Has she ever worked a job with her hands? Has she ever, lifted things that are heavy, put calluses on? Should she? Probably not. But what does that woman have? Like, what connection does she have to people that actually do that? Gas is so expensive, and we need to stay in Iran. We need to stay in Iran, so we need to have the government give out money. Okay. Same claim here.
Mr. President, your supporters are hurting. People who voted for you 3 times, who would walk over Legos covered in hot coals to vote for you.
Oh my God, the Legos covered in hot coals. Have you guys ever put hot coals on top of Legos? They melt because Legos are made of plastic and they're just super uncomfortable to walk on. But if you could imagine if they were hot coals on top of Legos, they would just be hot coals on puddles of melty plastic that children would have. That's so relatable to you. That's why they would do it, to go and to vote for you. So could you just give them some of the money that the government took, that they paid for out of their pocket, back to them, and just tell them that you love them? And then you could just keep fighting the Iran war. And maybe you could take mean words and say them to Benjamin Netanyahu. Let him know. Let him know who's the real boss there. You're the boss, big boy. You want to know what really turns people off? Elitism. He's the president of the working class. That's what they claimed, right? Working class, that's who voted for him. Blue collar people, regular people, American people, bacon cheeseburger nationalist type people. I think we should actually win them over the old school Trump way. Just talk about how much gold you have, how awesome your life is, and how far away from the reality of whatever sort of low class sloppy people you are. Don't be like the masses. Listen, when I buy a private island, okay, and this happens, I can't even tell you. It's just, once I was on a friend's boat, and we were just, sailing around the Mediterranean. And as we sailed around, my wife and I saw this island, and we were like, go to that island, guy who drives the boat, whoever you are. And so he drove us to the near the island, and we swam off, and we swam to the island, and there were no buildings. It was completely empty, barren island. And we're like, ugh, we must have this island. And so we acquired it, along with the 5 miles of shoreline in Albania that was next to it. And then we were like, we're going to build something here, but it really must be part of the landscape of the island because it's so naturally beautiful. I want to build something that is part of the island, that looks like it just grew out of the island. And this is not even really more than me just wanting to recognize what my lifestyle is about. And I just want to live my lifestyle in the way that I imagine it. What's $1.5 billion? We're talking about an island here, right? What are you talking about, Seraphin? What's wrong with you? Oh, I don't know. I was just listening to Donald Trump's daughter earlier, and then I thought, this is a pretty good way to connect to people. Have Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump talk about the island they're building off the coast of Albania.
I'm working on an incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean. It's massive in scale.
I think that's an understatement. Can you explain?
Yes, it is.
It is an understatement.
There's no power on this island. You're building everything from scratch. Correct.
It's an unbelievable, beautiful 1,400 hectare private island in the middle of the Mediterranean. We were on a friend's boat and we stopped for a swim. Effectively, that's how we found it.
There were no maps of this thing. We just found it. We were just floating around in the Mediterranean. And then we were like, oh my God, do you see that amazing just island waiting there to be bought by someone? We could be that someone. Here we are.
Swam to the islands. We went on a hike, barefoot all the way up to the top. And we were.
You guys won't believe this, but Jared, he was actually wearing the actual swimsuit that James Bond wore when he came out of the water. The sort of like little onesie Speedo thing, the little box suit that he was wearing. It was in blue. So fantastic. It was worn by Daniel Craig. In fact, I always tell him he looks like sort of a lean Daniel Craig.
We're just captivated, and it stayed with us ever since. And over the course of many years, we developed the opportunity to help realize its potential. And
some of you don't realize it, but it takes many years for us to be able to develop an opportunity to build this incredible architecture to capture the natural rustic beauty of the Albanian island we just have.
And transform it, but with a lot of restraint and care because the land is so beautiful.
If you don't transform an island with restraint and care, you're liable to make it gaudy and gross or something that people will not recognize. And so that's what we've done. We've developed it with an opportunity with care and restraint.
That really the architecture has to be fully integrated into it, almost rise from it.
Yes.
You know, it's not even a business for me, despite this.
Let me just tell you something. This is not about money. This is not about business. This is not about flaunting what we have and sort of that extreme wealth that some people would die never even seeing, let alone grasping. No, this is really just an opportunity for me to realize the way that I want to live. And you should want it too. Not for you, of course, but for me. This is how I want to live. Let's do this.
Scale of it. We not only the island, but we have 5 miles of beachfront directly.
Did you catch that? It's not just an island. It's 5 miles of beachfront. Do you know how far 5 miles is? It would take you 30 minutes to run quickly to get there if you were Steve Friend. That's how far it is. 5 miles of beachland. Here we go.
Across from the island, this beautiful peninsula with a lagoon on one side, the ocean on the other. Beautiful white sand beaches. For me, it feels more like a challenge than anything else.
Guys, what is life but overcoming challenges? Like, how do I get a private island and 5 miles of beaches along with $1.5 billion to develop it? This is just a challenge.
The culmination of all of my experience in real estate, all of my travel, a lot of reflection on how I want to live,
Sometimes I sit around and I just have reflections on how do I want to live, and then I just acquire islands off the coast of Albania that I discovered on a boat that I didn't own, but I was commanding.
I think people increasingly are wanting to live and trying to really build something that's a tangible manifestation of that.
So for all of you that are whining out there about how your tangible manifestation of how you really want to live is not being recognized, shut up. Stop being poor. You should have thought of that before you were peasants. I kid you not. That might be the most tone-deaf thing you could ever... Who told you that you should go and talk right now, at this moment, to anyone? You should be caged somewhere so that you can't do that ever again until the end of this thing. This is how you end up with people in front of a guillotine. Oh, you don't have enough food. It's difficult for you to... You're skipping meals. You don't have enough money to fill up your gas tank. You should have thought of that before you were peasants. Isn't that Robin Hood Men in Tights? Wasn't that Mel Brooks? Oh, that was in the 90s when that came out. Oh. That's incredible stuff. That is an incredible way of talking. Everything about that makes me happy. I'm so glad I got to see that. So it's not surprising that people are sort of looking around and going, well, if that's what the daughter of the president thinks, and we've seen what the president does, and his biggest thrust back is that he said the F word to Israel while they continued to do the thing that he was yelling at them about. What is that? Where are we?
There is, what's core MAGA now?
What is it?
I have no idea.
I think I know.
Tell us.
Trump has said from the beginning...
Pedophile supporting Israeli lobby?
That might be it.
I have no idea.
Need a different acronym. But Trump has said from the beginning that he defines what MAGA is. MAGA is what I say it is, he has said. And he's not wrong. It's his moniker. It's his campaign slogan.
You're listening to Megyn Kelly on The Sean Ryan Show. I would say that MAGA is a physical manifestation of the reality that I want to live in. That's what I would say. What would you say, Megyn Kelly? What do you think it is?
And all along, he's defined what is and is not MAGA. And he told me personally, MAGA will feel the way I want them to feel. I'll tell them how to feel about this, that, or the other thing, and they will. And he has been totally right on that. The problem for Trump now is that he has defined MAGA literally to those who agree with Mark Levin. If you don't agree with Mark Levin, you're not MAGA, which means you must be a neocon whose main issue is what's in the best interest of Israel.
No shit. That's my favorite Sean Ryan. If you were going to wonder, like, what would Sean Ryan likely say if you were going to put money down on a phrase that he would respond to anything that anyone tells him at any time? I used to do my Sean Ryan impression. I would do it to him too. I think he would. I think he would agree with me. He'd be like, "No shit," right? It's really something. That's what MAGA is. It's whatever Mark Levin says. I'm going to keep in mind. This is a generational opportunity. It's a generational opportunity that we have that we're responsible for, even though Mark Levin is 68 years old and his generation should not be involved in any generational anythings. And his son's generation, many of them chose not to serve in the military, including his son, who's not in the military. But it's a generational responsibility. We have to go and take out this Iranian regime. Right? You want some black pill corruption? Corruption that will black pill you, maybe? There's so many stories that you don't hear, which a responsible news media, even on the right, should present. So it's like, look, we want to give you all the information. We still think the guy is better than the alternative. I get this every morning. It's like, oh, did you want Kamala Harris? It's like, no, you dipshit. I voted for Donald Trump. I just wanted Donald Trump to be Donald Trump and not whatever this is. And that's the overwhelming theme. I don't think that you're going to win me back by saying the F word to the Israeli prime minister. That's not going to do it for me. Maybe you should do the thing that you said, like, I don't know, not do a war. Maybe you should bring energy prices under control so that I'm not paying $5, $5.50 a gallon for diesel. And I don't even need to drive that often. In fact, the original podcast producer for this podcast, my buddy Phil, he goes, have you thought about maybe like doing like a video rant from your car when you're driving around? And I'm like, bro, my life is so weird right now. This is where I drive a podcast desk. I don't drive anywhere. My commute is going up and down stairs. I live in an alternate reality to what I used to. Now, I still remember reality. I did used to go to a job like most of you do. I did used to show up I woke up morning and had my coffee made and put it into a thermos and I rolled out to go to work. And then I used to sit in an F-150 for like 9 hours a day watching bad guys. And sometimes I drove all over the place. And sometimes I just sat still and used binoculars. And sometimes I had to sit in the office and type up boring forms. Like I did regular jobs for most of my life. This is the alternative to any reality. And yet, I am divorced from reality and I still know how freaking expensive it is to go drive somewhere. When I start thinking about driving up to go shoot at my range, which is 20 minutes away, I'm like, ugh, how much does that cost me in this truck? What does it cost me to drive 20 minutes up the road? Probably like $5. I get really good mileage too on my F-250 diesel. And yet, it's not cheap. So I voted for the Trump that Trump said he was, not the Trump that Trump has turned into. And I don't think you can just fix it by sending out stimmy checks. And I don't think you can fix it by saying the F word to somebody.
I just don't see any positivity coming out of this administration. It seems very self-serving. I have a list of shit printed I could go through, but I mean, what was the last one? He fucking made it so he had Todd Blanche do the dirty work so that him or anybody in his family could never be audited by the IRS. What the fuck is that shit?
Mm-hmm.
What is
the
that?
Drone company, the $400 million jet from Qatar.
Yep.
Oops.
What is it? The Executives Club. You know about that?
Yeah, that they started in D.C.
You don't hear about any of this shit.
Guys, the Executives Club or the Executive Branch is a private club that was created by Donald Trump Jr. And as I understand it from what I've read, I think it's a $500,000 buy-in where you can be a member of the club too. And then you get to mingle with and hang out with members of the executive branch of the federal government. It's a pay to have access to the people who are making the decisions. So for $500,000 that you write off with your company, you can personally lobby the people who might be able to do stuff. You guys don't know that the Trump administration got a $400 million jet from Qatar that's going to go with Donald Trump to his presidential library afterwards. They got retrofitted by the United States Air Force on our dollar. There's a lot of stuff like this.
Yeah.
Does this shit look like he's serving the fucking people? No. So you're going to serve that? Or are you going to speak out against it and let everybody know what the fuck is happening?
You think I'm working on an incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean. It's massive in scale.
I think that's an understatement. Can you explain?
Yes, it is.
There's no power on this island. You're building everything from scratch. Correct.
Well, it's an unbelievable, beautiful 1,400 hectare private island in the middle of the Mediterranean.
What we did was we actually paid for the developer who did Jeffrey Epstein's island. And we were like, how could we make an island that had like maybe a little bit less on the pedophile, but equally good with the desalinization and the water purification and the solar capability? We wanted to be self-sustaining, off the grid, on an island with no lines to us. And we wanted to have it so that we could also land at our own port of 5 miles in Albania. I mean, it's not really like an island. It's more like a manifestation of the way that I wish to live. And I think more people are now beginning to also wish to live in this way. And that's why they also became billionaires by political corruption and selling a name with access to the most important piggy bank in the world, the United States of America's treasury, backed by the American taxpayers who want us to have these things. Cool. Got it. I'm tracking. Okay. You guys want some black pills? Where did we get election security? Do you guys recall election security was a thing? There it is, number 19 on the list of promises. It seems important. Secure our elections. Include same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, proof of citizenship. Should you not go and lock down the one thing that Donald Trump says was the problem and the reason why he was not allowed to come back into office, why he didn't win in 2020 when he went up against Joe Biden, as Joe Biden ran from his basement? Did we just forget about this? Is this a thing that we're not willing to talk about it anymore? Because it seems like we should talk about it. It seems like regular people knew this was a problem. I actually saw a clip from Mike Howell the other day. I like Mike Howell. In fact, I like Mike Howell a lot. Every time I talk to him, I like him. I think he went on Bannon's War Room and he was like, I want to stand with people that still have the same problems. We should be calling out the same problems. Look at number 9 up there on the top of the screen. And weaponized government against the American people. These are not solved issues. These are the fatal issues. Affordability is a big deal. That's how you win elections. Deportations is a critical deal. That's how you save this country. The federal government is a lethal threat to Americans. That's why you have to end weaponization. And nobody believes that we're actually going to elect our way out of it because there is, in fact, no reform on elections.
I stand with everybody who wants accountability for the 2020 election, for the persecution of Christians, for what they did to anybody who fought for election integrity down the list. Those are the people who showed up to put Trump in the White House instead of a jail cell. And that's what we need to see done.
Well, I don't even know what the Republican Party is anymore.
Yeah,
nobody stands up for anything.
It's unclear.
Not inside. All these people I thought were Republicans on the outside are standing up against it, but nobody on the inside is, except the people that are resigning and Massey.
Yeah.
But all the Pete Hegseth fucking went down there to campaign against him. What is that shit? Did he forget he started a fucking war?
Yeah. That was so highly irregular.
What the fuck was that? Is that even legal?
It's legal, but it's...
Because as a military member, you can't be doing shit like that.
And we have never, like in modern history, I think it's fair to say, I can't think of another example, have we deployed the Secretary of Defense, or now War, for a specifically political mission? Right? Like we've always tried not to do that because it's important that our military have the support of all parties, that they not be seen as a politicized group. And I think the Pentagon tried to justify it by saying, oh, he was going down there on multiple items. You know, it wasn't just to sink Massey.
Nobody believes that.
That's tough to swallow. And it's like so much with the Trump presidency, it's a bridge we shouldn't have crossed. Like there are certain norms and protocols that are good, that are there for a reason.
Yeah, there are some things you should do. Like maybe when you're working in the government, you don't have to be in the politics part of it, especially if you're a part of a thing that should be kind of nonpartisan, which, by the way, the DOD should be very nonpartisan, it turns out. I did not meet a lot of overtly political people. I'm sure they're there at the Pentagon. They all seem, if anybody's ever experienced this from the military, you'll have somebody who's a lower ranking officer. They'll be a captain. They might be a lieutenant colonel or a major. And they go and do a stint at the Pentagon in D.C. or right outside of D.C. And then they come back from that and they are not the same. Yeah, it's Department of War, but it was Department of Defense when I was there. When you had these people leave and come back, like something switched in them when they worked in the Pentagon. And they realize like what it looks like if you want to get a promotion. You have to become a political animal. So the upper echelons of the military are politicians, not the same as those at the bottom, which is by the way, why they liked Pete Hegseth, right? He wasn't a senior officer. He wasn't, an E5 or above. That was kind of the appeal, is that you got a guy who understood what it was like to not have been to the Pentagon, to go in it. And he does show some of that still. But the fact that he was willing to take marching orders and go out there and try to unseat Tom Massey, and that the Department of War sent a guy to Kentucky for, it does feel like people are taking orders from what? The same people that were dropping $20 million worth in there, which were Israeli lobbies, pro-Israeli billionaires, etc. I'll quickly kind of share this with you because I think this is truly unsettling stuff. And it also shows you sort of the illusion of choice, the fact that you're getting sort of like a piece of the news, but not all the news. People are really mad about Jerome Powell. One of the ways that you would make America affordable again, by the way, would be how you'd handle inflation. And that's a long-term problem, not a short-term problem. You'd have to do that by tightening down on interest rates. They did this, by the way, right about the time that I was born, late 70s, early 80s. This was one of those things that the Fed did. They bumped up the interest rates to a crazy amount for what would be crazy today. You'd have to see housing prices drop because you deflate. The dollar would be worth more. The interest rates would go up like crazy. But my parents' first house was like 13, 14% interest. Today, people are bitching about 5%. And the reason is because the cost of housing has gone up by 300, 400% over the last decade or two. Like, we've watched housing go, whoa. So nobody can afford to borrow money at 5% or 6%. But they certainly can't afford to buy it at 14%. And if you did, theoretically, those housing prices would go down. They'd have to, because the dollar would theoretically go up in value. So even though you would sell it for less money, it would be worth more. Donald Trump doesn't want to do this thing. So what do? We supplanted Jerome Powell. We put in this guy named, what's his name? Kevin, look him up again. Kevin Warsh, W-A-R-S-H. He's now the chair of the Federal Reserve. And you go, okay, fine. Well, Trump's got his guy in there. He's gotten rid of Jerome Powell. Way to go. Maybe he'll do the right things, whatever that is. Well, it turns out this guy has also been talking about how AI is making the dollar worth more money. And so therefore we can actually cut interest rates and we can do the thing that makes the economy look like it's good still again, even though we're going to continue the inflation game. Would you like to hear what his father-in-law has to say? That wouldn't be relevant to anybody, right? His father-in-law, it turns out, is Ron Lauder, who's the sole living heir to the Estee Lauder fortune and all the Estee Lauder brands associated underneath it. There's a ton of them in there, things that I have never heard of. And this little clip went out and it was running around on the internet because he went and gave a speech. This is Ron Lauder giving the speech, talking about how the Israeli government and the Jewish diaspora across the world, so people who are ethnically Jewish, should be contributing $1 billion+ to run a piece of the Israeli government that they would fund privately to do PR with all the sophistication of Shin Bet and the Mossad. And I'm sure IDF 8200. The father-in-law of the guy who was just put in charge of the Federal Reserve of the United States is a billionaire. And his hope is that there will be a big Israeli PR machine, I guess bigger than what Fox News is, because it's already got that. It's already got Mark Levin doing this thing. It's already got a huge chunk of the federal government doing this thing, and a lot of your Congress people. If you guys have never heard this, let's just figure out what people are saying in their own words. Again, father-in-law of the chair of the Federal Reserve that Donald Trump just installed a couple days ago. This is within the last couple weeks.
The Jewish state is facing rockets of disinformation every minute of every day. There is no less a campaign to destroy the country. And it's coming from TikTok. It's coming from mainstream media, from the BBC, from CNN. It's coming from each posting, each headline, each fake photo of a starving child in Gaza. And these lies are no less dangerous than the rockets heading towards Jewish homes. And they are constant. Israel must create a new Iron Dome to not just fight this never-ending cascade of lies.
He just said, and he just did the conflation. And this is the problem, is that people who should know better, who should be very precise with their words, are conflating. He said towards Jewish homes, not Israeli homes, Jewish homes. And we keep seeing this happen. We keep seeing people say these things. They're conflating the word Jewish and the word Israeli, and I have a major problem with it because you're doing the thing so that you can now shame people who have an issue with what's going on in Israel. A same reason why you have our president right now saying F you to the prime minister of Israel. He's not the prime minister of Jew or whatever the hell that would look like, right? It's like, that's not what's going on. This is an independent, sovereign nation that is propped up by the United States somewhere else, and we have to look tough. Meanwhile, our billionaire class has family members now running our money system. and they're making the same conflating thing that Jew equals Israel, Israel equals Jew, and they are not the same. And that way, if you call out one, then you are now going to be hit with a slanderous claim that you're somehow anti-Semitic and that you're somehow anti-Jewish. I have no idea what this guy's Jewish faith looks like. But you end up seeing a lot of these folks that seem to be secular, atheist Jewish people. And then they claim Jewish, and they also claim allegiance to Israel and say that it's really important. And if you have a problem with it, they go back and they lean on this thing that you're somehow bigoted, when it's a geopolitical question and it's not a question of bigotry.
But it also must go on the offensive. There should be a completely new and vitally important government operation.
Here we go.
With a new director, not just a political appointee, but someone who knows PR and news backwards and forwards. It should be a separate building. It should have a $1 billion budget. Some of the $1 billion should come from Jews in the diaspora. Diaspora Jews should partner with Israel in this PR fight.
This is an American citizen, for whatever it's worth, guys. Net worth somewhere in the $4.5 to $5 billion range. This is Ronald Stephen Lauder, American businessman, who is arguing for a new building funded by the Jewish diaspora, including people in America, theoretically, for a foreign nation's government, and it should be funded by people that he's talking to. That's his claim, that there should be a funded foreign government building, and he's behind it, in theory. Like, he's throwing his weight behind it, and I assume he would throw some money behind it.
Because in the end, it won't be just protecting the Jewish state. It'll be protecting the Jewish people worldwide. And Israel should use its excellent intelligence services in this fight. The Mossad and Shin Bet are second to none, and they must know where these lies are coming from.
He just said the Mossad and Shin Bet are second to none, and they have to know where the lies are coming from. So he is now explicitly stating that he thinks Israeli intelligence should be finding out who is saying things that are mean about Israel so that they can identify them. He goes on later on in the speech to say that they should have beautiful faces from Israel, Israeli women and men on television 24/7, spewing counter PR to anything that they don't like once they've discovered who's saying this stuff. It's pretty wild. It's a real wild claim about free speech from an American. Again, this is from an American. That's the big part here.
It just makes sense to use them in this fight, and it should be one day in, day out. When Israel is hit with lies, Israel should hit back twice as hard. Its response should be furious. It should counterattack every single hour of every single day, and no institution should be spared.
Got it. Okay, yeah. Not beating any allegations there on things about dual loyalty. You're literally having somebody who theoretically is American, who made a fortune and stays in this country, who just had his son-in-law moved into one of the most important roles in the American financial system. And what are you doing? You're making arguments that Jewish diaspora money, so people who are Jewish worldwide, should be contributing money to Israel. You know, this is where you get these Ben Shapiro clips where people were like, Ben Shapiro says that my loyalty to the United States is contingent on the United States supporting Israel. What the F, man? Who says stuff like that? It makes so little sense to people like me. I have no other country. I have no other place. There is no Czech Republic that accepts the Seraphin brand and says, oh, we will take you in at all times. And I think I should give my money to the Czech government because we have some heritage there. Or the French government, from whence my family came a long time ago, I guess. Or the Canadian government, from whence my grandfather came. Like, where would that, like, there are not Americans who do this stuff in general. Unless you're actually not part of the mainstream American culture. And we find that people do that when they're not part of a mainstream American culture. The H-1B stuff, the people who come here on migrant worker visas that are doing remittances where they're taking money that they earn in the United States and they send it back as part of their, I don't know, tribute for living in America. Indians do it. Mexicans do it. A lot of South Americans do it as well. They take money earned in the U.S. They live on as little as they can. They live in a substandard version of what Americans do. And then they send what they have in excess and they send it over. Okay. I don't get it. I don't think it's anti-Semitic. I don't think it's xenophobic to call out things that are not American. The American system is. And here's the thing. I went back and watched. I've been watching these Little House on the Prairie stuff. We watch these episodes. They're like a time capsule, right? Michael Landon produced it. Highway to Heaven. This was probably his big thing, the Little House series. And they're a love story to America when you watch them. They're a love story to like hard work, American values, Christian love of neighbor, Christian charity. The conflicts they have in these shows are so minor and minute. It's like little girls not getting along and somebody told a lie and it hurt somebody's feelings, or the husband is working so hard at a second job and he doesn't tell his wife what that second job is and she wonders like, oh, is he having an affair? It's like, no, he's busting his ass 13, 15 hours a day and he's doing so he could buy you a set of dishes because Americans scraped for everything to get anything they had. And they'll have these love stories where they'll bring on an immigrant from another country and he'll have a Slavic accent. He'll speak in Russian or Ukrainian or whatever. And he'll have something really bad happen to him, like a tax collector takes his land. And then he says, you know, like, America's still the freest and the greatest country. And everyone goes, oh, it's incredible. America's the freest and greatest country. Even at its worst, America is its best. It's the best of the world. That was what they did. This is like the late 70s, early 1980s. This is that feeling that America was exceptional. This is why people would look back and say, I want to make America great again. Because there was a time when everybody went, aha, yes, America is exceptional. We want that thing. And Donald Trump ran on that nostalgia. And then they've conflated supporting what he's currently doing with patriotism when it's completely unrelated.
I'm working on an incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean.
I mean, that's how I would make America great again. What I would do is I would develop an island that I found on a swim from somebody's yacht in the Mediterranean. And I would just try to manifest like the world that I want to live in and the way it's the culmination of all my experience at whatever. How old is Ivanka Trump anyway? She's not that old. I don't have any personal beef against her, but this is just one of the most tone-deaf things you could ever do. She's 44 years old, so she's exactly my age. She was born a couple days before I was. So yeah, in all my experience and everything, what I've decided is I need to develop a multi-billion-dollar program on an island. This is how you're going to get the guillotines. This is how you're going to get... I saw someone make a reference to this on social media the other day, and I don't think they're wrong. Like, we have an attitude. It's a small one, but it is growing. It's a festering frustration with the sort of French Revolution sensation. When you have open kind of communist claims coming from the news nation types, Mr. President, could you just give us money from the government to save people, these hardworking people who just can't stop being peasants? They just need a handout from the government. How about you get the government's boot off our neck so that we're not paying taxes on money that we earn, on money that we spend, on money that we save, on money that we try to retire on? How about every single thing that we have not be taxed every single time that you can think about it? How about you buy a property, and then when you have that property, you don't pay for the privilege of owning the property that you're renting from the fucking bank every single time that you have to write a check? Pardon my language, but every one of your mortgage checks also includes property taxes, does it not, that goes into escrow? How about we just don't have government take every single thing they can like you're the piggy bank, because then you end up with people that are at the top of the piggy bank and they're making deposits on private islands with 5 miles of beach that they can land on. It's pretty freaking wild. It's pretty shocking to me. And one version of this is the people that seem to get in there that said they were going to do reform. The first thing they do is the exact opposite of that reform. And that, I think, is maybe the most galling thing. How many of us had hope that Daniel Bongino would go in and wreck house at the FBI? He said he was going to do it. I listened to him, even after we had a falling out. I was like, I said this in March of last year. I said, if Daniel Bongino corrects what's going on at the FBI and stops it from being weaponized, it will be a generational penance for any wrongdoing he's ever done in his life, because he's walking into a nest of snakes. and to walk in there, and if he's successful, he'll be a hero, regardless of what anyone thought of him beforehand. He will be, for all Americans, like left and right, it would turn out, even people that would hate him. And then in 292 days, he had enough, and he called uncle, and he got out. It was just too much. It's too hard. He looked into the depths, and he said, I quit. And we're left with Kash Patel, who's an equally terrific liar. Here's the story of maybe today that needs to be covered. And this is also really, really critical. Are you guys ready for this part? FBI director's girlfriend sues MS Now, accuses cable network of false betrayal. The headline is not Alexis Wilkins, who stands on her own 2 feet and has an independent notoriety, name, brand, or value. It's FBI director's girlfriend. And when he's not the FBI director because he gets impeached, which I think will probably happen either in 27 or 29, doesn't make a difference when, she'll be former FBI director's girlfriend? She'll be FBI director's former girlfriend? She'll be former FBI director's former girlfriend? What will happen then? This lady, who's 27, who's unmarried and dating a man older than me, who's a Hindu, but she's a conservative Christian. I'm only quoting from her own lawsuit. She's a conservative Christian influencer and a political commentator and an author and a singer, but she's not a public figure. That's fun too. We're going to go into this lawsuit real quickly. The FBI director's girlfriend sues MS Now. Alexis Wilkins' lawsuit accuses MS Now of sham, in the air quotes, sources to, quote, push knowingly or recklessly false allegations. So we don't have a free press in America when this chick can turn around and sue anybody for any reason, and you can't get rid of these lawsuits easily. They cost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to make them go away. To what end? Here's what I actually think is going on, lest people think otherwise, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me privately and say, what is happening here? Like, what is the game? And I've had a couple of people agree that this is probably likely. The Kash Patel Foundation used to be called the Fight with Cash Foundation. And the Fight with Cash Foundation shared an address, and it shared a physical space, because they're all the same thing, with the Bunnell Law Group. The Bunnell Law Group is Jesse Bunnell, who is suing all the people, to include me, full disclosures. He also was collecting money for this thing called the Kash Patel Legal Offense Fund. And now the Fight with Cash Foundation has been changed, and it's now called the Kash Foundation. And so Kash Patel is no longer a part of it. And so you have these 3 or maybe 4 legal entities. And the entities are as follows: the Bunnell Law Group, which is the law firm. You have the Kash Foundation, or the Fight with Cash Foundation. And then you have this thing called the Kash Patel Legal Offense Fund. And they all have different addresses, but it's all the same physical address. And this is my supposition. This is complete speculation, having not been able to look into their finances. But I would love it if somebody could. And I would love it if we had, like, I don't know, federal agency that looked this kind of thing. What it looks like is people are donating money to one thing, that one entity, and the Bunnell Law Group is now filing lawsuits to bill against the charity that they run, or the law fund that they run, to be able to put money back into their pockets. And as I saw it, they collected something like $3.5–4 million over the last couple of years in total. Some of it will be in expenses, but I guess that there's a pot of money that's just sitting around waiting for some sort of name. Why not file some frivolous lawsuits and bill some hours against it? Because I'm fairly confident she's not paying her own bills. Again, I don't have any specific knowledge that this is the case. This is my opinion, that this is the likelihood that we are seeing these frivolous lawsuits against The Atlantic, against NBC News, against Me, against people on Twitter, against Elijah Schaffer, Sam Parker. My guess is that they are actually taking money from a thing that was meant to help out guys like me, theoretically, because that's what Kash Patel was actually saying when they were saying, hey, how can we support you financially? I was like, you don't need to support me financially. Make a donation to the Fight with Cash Foundation. That'd be great. Here's how you get to it. I've done that a bunch of times, as did Garrett O'Boyle, as did Steve Friend. Steve Friend's parents threw significant money into that foundation. They made up for every single dollar the Cash Foundation gave to Friend, to Steve. It feels gross to be scammed like that. And I say that as someone who feels like I got scammed. So here's the lawsuit, okay? So this is the story. Sham sources, false allegations. What is it about? They've named Ken Delanian and Carol Leonig. The defendants falsely asserted that Ms. Wilkins demanded and Director Patel ordered that federal agents assigned to her security detail, which didn't even exist at the time in their claims, escorted an intoxicated friend home after a night of partying. They falsely portrayed Ms. Wilkins as being intoxicated, even knowing that she does not drink. We're going to go through the lawsuit because I have it in front of me. Even knowing that she does not drink. This is a false betrayal that's highly offensive to Miss Wilkins and would any reasonable person in her situation, her professional identity. I want you to listen to this. This is Alexis Wilkins, who none of you knew anything about and probably still don't know anything about other than this. Miss Wilkins' professional identity is of a responsible, sober young woman who does not partake in the excess drinking culture and party scene that is typical for musicians. That's what her lawyers argued. I'm going to read all those things from her lawsuit. We have the lawsuit here, so I'll read through this. This is a truly bizarre situation because she has a, quote, professional identity. And that professional identity is one of not drinking. And yet, I don't know, if you were to go and look at what sort of songs does this woman sing? What sort of things does she say on places like Instagram or X? She said things like, what an honor to serve up some drinks for the heroes. Toast incredible veterans at the Big and Rich show at the NRA this weekend. Thanks for having me. And it shows her pouring drinks from tequila bottles and from whiskey and handing out drinks. She's like a cocktail waitress of some kind. You could find songs that she wrote about every liquor you can think of and beer. She's a person who does not drink, and everyone should know that. And then yet you read Quite Like Whiskey by Alexis Wilkins. She's apparently the writer and the singer of this. By the way, I listened to it for about 20 seconds. I couldn't listen to it much more. It's not a good song. Tequila gets me talking just a little too much, telling all my secrets till the sun comes up. Wine makes me cry till I fall asleep. Beer don't do it just like quite like Jim Beam. Whiskey gets me out on the dance floor. Nothing gets me quite like whiskey. I get a little crazy when sipping champagne. That fruity stuff leaves me with a bad headache. Rum gets it done, but it ain't the same. Turns out there's only one way to get me. Whiskey gets me out on the dance floor, she says. Nothing quite like whiskey. Quite Like Whiskey is the title of this song. Now, you'd imagine someone who wrote that song obviously has a persona that is associated with not drinking, right? Because that's what we're told. Here we have the lawsuit in front of us. Alexis Wilkins Plains against Versant Media Group, also known doing business as MS Now. Kara Leonic and Ken Delanian specifically called out. Their problem is this story here, which is archived, and I'll share an archived copy of it. Kash Patel ordered FBI detail to give girlfriend's pal a lift home. Sources. Again, girlfriend, the girl who is a friend, non-spouse. More importantly, and maybe most importantly, never named by name until actually deeper into the story. She's known first as Patel's girlfriend, who is a friend of Patel, and then later identified by name. Asked FBI agents to drive her security detail at least twice, had to drive one of her friends home, including once during the spring. They're claiming that there was no security detail at that time. That's part of the lawsuit. As far as I can tell, I think there was a security detail. It's known as the GFD, or the girlfriend detail. I shit you not. That is the actual name of it. One of my Quantico classmates, who doesn't speak to me anymore because he was on the Mar-a-Lago raid. It turns out he might be one of the guys in charge of it, from what we can tell. It's kind of hard to figure it out, but he moved to Nashville, from what I understand, to go run that detail. And it was like summer or early summer or late spring, depending on how you categorize it. I'm pretty sure there was one. That's actually not the most crazy thing here. They took issue with the way that the story was written. FBI spokesperson Ben Williamson broadly disputed that such events took place. So they didn't like the way that they quoted. This is an ongoing theme I see with the Trump administration, but actually Patel specifically. They are very incensed if the mainstream media doesn't do what Jesse Waters does, which is say exactly what they're supposed to say because we gave you our statement. Now publish our statement exactly as we said it to you. Don't paraphrase it. Don't put your own spin on it. Don't quote it in part. Share everything that we said because we are the government and you are required to report as you are told. That's what they get pissed about. And then they file lawsuits here. Guys, if you're watching on Rumble, YouTube, like, subscribe, same thing. If you're listening, you may hear an ad from the Spotify folks. Leave that space there, KyleSerafinShow.com. If you want the video, as we go through this lawsuit, we're going to get back to it here. Should I play you where this story kind of broke out? I think I've got that right here. And then we'll end with amnesty, and then I'll end with something that's kind of nice.
We've got another MS Now exclusive. We've learned that on more than one occasion, the girlfriend of FBI Director Kash Patel, who has a taxpayer-funded security detail, has asked those FBI agents to drive home a friend of hers who is allegedly inebriated and too drunk to drive. And we're told that those agents initially refused, and then the girlfriend, Alexis Wilkins, she's a country singer in Nashville, called FBI Director Caputo, and he got involved and essentially required the agents to drive the friend home. This is according to 3 sources familiar with the matter. I should say that Caputo's spokesman has adamantly denied this story, said it didn't happen, but our sources say that it did happen. And it comes in the context of a lot of questions about Patel's use of taxpayer resources, flying on the FBI jet with his girlfriend, and he provided this taxpayer-funded security detail, even though she lives in another city. And that's really unprecedented in FBI history, all of which adds up to more controversy for the FBI director.
Not wrong about any of those things. You can see why I'm also in this. I'm actually sort of like implicated in some ways because the stories about the jet were something that I was sort of carrying on in a really aggressive way. And that's not new to Kash Patel. It was something I carried on about Chris Wray as well. So that's been a bugaboo of mine, misuse of government resources. And I would think that adding a security detail to a non-spousal partner that is a friend of yours in another city seems like it's a problem. We're apparently spending money on up to 4 FBI agents full-time, 2 at a time, running shifts to protect this woman. I just did a look, by the way, and I found, and I'll post it maybe over on Locals as well, I found a little snippet of you can book Alexis Wilkins to come speak or sing at or whatever she does at your event between $25,000 and $35,000 a pop. And I don't know if that means it also comes with an FBI security detail, but I imagine so. So that's kind of a bargain to get a couple of FBI agents to come in and do security for your event. $25,000 plus you get a singer of mediocre quality. So you got that. So here's the allegations in the actual lawsuit, which I think are ridiculous. I think this lawsuit is internally conflicted. Okay, they falsely portray Ms. Wilkins as being intoxicated, even knowing that she does not drink. Remember those words, she does not drink. Okay, then they go and they cite anonymous sources, non-public, inside knowledge, blah, blah, blah. In the actual lawsuit, they say this was hogwash and they knew it. Very legalese. Journalists cannot avoid accountability by hiding behind fabricated anonymous sources. Look, you're going to what? Subpoena the entire security detail? Okay. So she's an individual resident of Tennessee. That makes sense. There's the defendants. They've described them. They're asking for an amount that causes a problem in excess of $75,000, which is a justification for the venue and the jurisdiction. And they are pursuant to Tennessee because she resides in this district and she experienced the results, whatever the results are as a result of this thing. All right, factual background. This is where I get really fun. I love the factual background of these stories because these are not factual. These are opinions. She lives in Nashville, yes, and she's in a personal relationship with Kash Patel, which means who knows what. She's a country singer, an author, and political advocate known for her Christian and patriotic values. Is she known for that, or is she known for anything at all? Does anyone know? Now they have a thing. They go and they get mad about the story, and the story is entitled Kash Patel ordered FBI detail to give girlfriend's pal a lift home. Sources. This is known as the article, and then they go on and they quote a couple things in the article that they don't like. This is entirely false. The FBI, Patel never ordered any FBI agent or member of Wilkins' security detail to escort any of Miss Wilkins' friends home. Here's where it gets real problematic for me, guys. How do they know that? How do they know Patel never gave that order? Unless the FBI director is involved in the creating of this lawsuit, which obviously he is. I think that's pretty clear. Because they have information that is not publicly available, and it's not something that is part of his duties as an FBI director to comment on necessarily. He never gave the order for any FBI agent or member of the security detail. And now I know that they have non-public information involved in this lawsuit because they have text messages and an exchange between Candelanian and the FBI Assistant Director of Public Affairs, a guy named Ben Williamson, who seems like his entire job is to lie for the FBI director. He's a PR guy. This is kind of nuts. Because once you realize where these text messages came from, they could only come from a couple of sources. They could come from Ben Williamson, who voluntarily gives it over to a law firm as a governmental employee who has no business being involved in this in any way, shape, or form. It could come from the FBI director on the orders of. One way or another, we're talking about the FBI is officially getting involved in this lawsuit, and we know that because there are text messages, in theory, from an FBI employee's phone being sent over to the attorneys to be able to use against someone that they are suing. Not only did these supposed demands never take place, the entire scenario is fabricated. No FBI agents have ever escorted Mrs. Wilkins' friends home. And somehow that's defamatory. Why is that defamatory, you might ask? I don't know. I don't know why it's defamatory to say that you have a friend who got drunk and someone drove them home. Now, here's where they start making a lot of liberties. This is the same thing they did with mine. These are what I would call conclusory allegations. In other words, something happened, and now we're going to tell you what that thing means, and it's not factual. This is not a factual background. This is your opinion. Okay? The opinion is that it is damaging to her reputation that she has the ability to command the FBI director to abuse public resources to do her bidding. And it would be damaging if Americans who are her readers, her listeners, her fans, her publishers, and her employers, and the people that look to her on social media, if those people thought that she was somehow controlling the FBI director, then that would be damaging to her brand. But she's not a public figure, as argued later on. So, you know, when you have readers, listeners, fans, publishers, editors, employers, but you're not a public figure, what are you? Or are you just a liar? Because that's what that looks like. That looks like the internal confliction inside this lawsuit. You know, this is the lawyers writing. This is not her writing this stuff. Defendants have previously published on November 17th an entire article about the security detail. So as of November 17th, they confirmed the detail. Well, I heard about the detail in the summer of 2025. So I don't know when it started, but I think it started before then. Defendants were the first to break the story, as Ms. Wilkins had only recently been assigned the detail. This stuff can all be proven when that started. There are FBI agents who are unlikely to lie under oath, although I wouldn't rule it out. They claimed it was because of death threats that were spread by fantastical lies about the defendant, which has nothing to do with any of this stuff. This is just things that they're claiming are in the background. On December 2nd, the 3 days prior to the publication, defendant Delanian reached out to FBI spokesman Ben Williamson. How do you know that? And why do you have an exchange that was the text message exchange? Now, you know that he had some comment. Why do you know what day it was on if you didn't have access to Ben Williamson saying it? Okay. Here's where they start. They have a text exchange between an FBI assistant director of public affairs and a reporter. Presumably, the reporter didn't share this text exchange so that he could be sued. So that means the FBI and or Ben Williamson did. You now have official involvement in this lawsuit by the federal government. There's no other way to say it. And he's doing so because of his official capacity to make comments on who? A private citizen that has no ties to the FBI in any meaningful way. There's no legal tie between Alexis Wilkins and the FBI. The fact that you have a boy who is your friend, that is not a legal tie. You don't cohabitate. As far as I can tell, they don't share custody of a child. They don't have a property that they're sharing. They don't live in the same space. This is a transactional relationship which could end at any moment. There's nothing tying them together at all. The defendants were specifically aware prior to publication the FBI had investigated the allegations and refuted them. Well, it turns out Ken Delanian actually said that in the video I just played you a second ago. He says the FBI denies it, but we have sources that say otherwise. So you're not allowed to publish things that people say that you believe to be true in America, where we have a First Amendment freedom of the press? We don't have a freedom of the press. And by the way, people in the press will actually, on the right side, will actually argue against this and say, well, Ken Delanian's a bad guy and you can't let them get away with this stuff. Are you freaking kidding me, people? Can you not say things in America? I thought that's what the First Amendment was about. Not only did the defendant Delanian recklessly disregard this fact, they claim it's a fact, even though it's not necessarily a fact. It's a provable thing, but none of us have access to do it. Are we going to be able to depose all these FBI agents? Because that sounds fun. Delanian said he's comfortable with his sourcing, and so was his company, which decided to go forward and publish the story. The FBI made a broad and reflexive denial, falsely claiming the FBI had refused to answer. They're mad about the way that he wrote the story with that sort of broadly denied, because the FBI specifically denied, and they're going to tell you how you can characterize the statement of the government. This is all about control and about telling you that you're not allowed to be in opposition. That is not okay in America. That is not a conservative value. There's nothing conservative about saying I sue people who say things in a way that I don't like them because they hurt my fifis. Additionally, defendant Delanian lied to the FBI in a text exchange, falsely claiming that he had no information on the general date of the alleged incident, and then later provided a springtime timeframe. Well, that's not really a general date, is it? It's like first week of April is a general date. Springtime of 2025 is probably not a general date. That's actually really vague. But they're claiming that he lied. So now they are calling Ken Delanian a liar, which he may be, but they're saying it in a legal document, and it goes out there with full force of people covering it and acting like this is somehow gospel, and it's not. And they're just mischaracterizing the things that he said. This is such disgusting, despicable crap. And yeah, I'm a little bit emotional about this stuff too, because I really dislike it. If they knew that the FBI was going to respond to something about the spring timeframe, then they could have gotten more than just an official comment, and they would have been able to say, they could have debunked the story even further. Well, it's not up to the reporter to say all these things. Again, this is an attempt to control the press. And it just shows you that the Trump administration has no respect for the First Amendment, which, by the way, was one of the things they said they were going to do in the Agenda 47. Every member of Wilkins' security detail flatly and rightly denied the allegations in the article. How would the attorneys get an official statement from FBI agents on a protective detail on their official duty when they are not in a position to actually confirm or deny anything as part of their official duty? You can't do that. How do you know, Kyle? Oh, I've been on special details like security detail. I mean, on surveillance details. You think somebody could come up and say, "Hey, can you confirm or deny that you guys were watching this guy on this day?" It's like, you could ask me that under oath. If you pull me into a court case, if you pull me into the prosecution or a defense witness, you can't ask me that as a random. I'm not going to tell you that. I could tell you what I do for a living on a regular basis. I'll give you broad and vague answers. I'm not going to go and answer somebody's attorney who's trying to file a private lawsuit against a journalist. There's no way you get that official comment. So how do they know that the security detail flatly and rightly denied the allegations? And who's confirming this other than the attorneys are writing this thing? They're just saying their opinion. Okay, this is where it gets really gross. Then they start having problems internally. As implicitly acknowledged by defendant Delanian, the article also implies that Miss Wilkins was inebriated. It actually doesn't. By claiming on multiple occasions she was out late after a, quote, night of partying with friends of group of inebriated friends in Nashville, a city well known for late night partying and drinking. You have to just assume that that's the case. I don't know it for that, but whatever. The article suggests to the average reader that Miss Wilkins is a heavy drinker. This is entirely false, as she rarely drinks, if ever. Now, earlier we heard that she doesn't drink at all, but now we know that she rarely drinks, so we already have an internal contradiction in this own little lawsuit. The defendants were put on actual notice. The implications were false. From Mr. Williamson's text message, the assistant director of public affairs for the FBI has explained to a journalist the drinking habits or lack thereof of the girlfriend, the girl who is the friend of the director. Remember, because that's what our government is paying for. We're paying for a spokesperson for the entire FBI to do PR work on behalf of the girl who is the friend of the director of the FBI and has no legal bounds. Are we freaking serious right now? The article was intended as a hit piece. That's an opinion. I mean, it was, but it's an opinion. Using Miss Wilkins as a vehicle to attack Director Patel. This is what it's all about again. Guys, we have a law firm that is filing hit lawsuits, frivolous garbage, because they are defending the feelings of the director of the FBI because he sucks. He sucks, objectively. He sucks at what he does. He's a yes man. He's incapable of stopping the weaponization. He is kowtowed to all the worst things. He is using the jet multiple times, sometimes per day, but definitely multiple times per week. As evidenced by the fact that of the 1,171 words in the article, roughly half were devoted to rehashing anonymous sources' debunked criticisms of Kash Patel. So let's get to the point of what this is really about. Kash Patel's friend, who runs Kash Patel's foundation, which is no longer associated with Kash Patel, but still bears his name, the Kash Foundation, is using his law firm to file a lawsuit that goes after critics of Kash Patel in the same way they went after me, in the same way they went after others. For instance, it rehashes criticism about Kash Patel's use of the government jet, insidiously comparing him to William Sessions, infamously misused FBI resources. I mean, they're using it about the same way, for whatever it's worth, because the girl who is the friend has also been on the jet. And Sessions was removed because his wife was on it, although he at least was married to the lady. There are a lot of commonalities in this story. And you're allowed to report on things that are being talked about in the public if they are newsworthy, including things that may or may not be true, it turns out. I thought we had a First Amendment in this country. What we're proving here is that there are civil implications, and there is this weaponized version of lawfare going after people for simply doing the job of journalists, including opposition journalists, by the way, which are allowed. Federal policy prohibits the FBI directors from flying commercial. Federal policy, not law. There's no mandate that requires it, federal policy. And that policy is instated by the DOJ, and it could be stopped at any moment. Todd Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel could fix that right now, which is what they should do, because that's what he said he would do, because he wanted to ground Chris Wray. They quote a former agent and MS Now contributor, this is probably Frank Vigluzzi, histrionically histrionically insinuating that based on anonymous sources, Director Patel broke his oath of office. Well, I think he actually already just lied under oath, and that seems pretty clear based on some of the things he said about Epstein, some of the things he said early on about whether or not he knew who Stu Peters was. It's pretty clear to me that Patel either shaded around the truth or explicitly was involved in perjury. Which would be, by the way, breaking your oath. Let's keep going. The article deliberately omits context because they are required to give context because that is their job, except it's not. You don't get to tell them what they report or how they report. Even people we don't like. There's like, how many times have we made fun of MSNBC here for the positions and the editorial bias they have? Frequently, weekly, for years. I still will defend their right to be able to do that. I wouldn't say they shouldn't exist or they should be sued out of existence. And we're going to get even worse than that. They're going to note that Ms. Wilkins is the beneficiary of misappropriated taxpayer resources, noting even that former spouses or spouses of former directors have received episodic protection. Yes, spouses, of which Ms. Wilkins is not. She's not a spouse. She has no legal connection to Kash Patel. None. Zero. I don't know why they keep acting like a girlfriend or a girl who is a friend is the same thing as being married to someone and having 50-50 share of your common assets. That's not a thing. So this gets really weird and gross, and it continues on. They keep harping in on the fact that there were quote-unquote death threats, campaign launched by social media influencers to accuse her of spying on the FBI. I've seen literally nobody accuse her of spying on the FBI with any degree of following. Nobody, to include myself. I've never once implied that she spied on the FBI for a foreign government. Not even a little bit. They imply that in their lawsuit because they made these conclusory allegations, but I never said that. And I don't know anyone else that is either. I'd love to see it. All right, so here's where it gets done. Defendants were motivated to sensationalize, in this case, fabricate a story to self-promotingly advance their own agenda and notoriety. This is their claim, that people are trying to get famous for lies. Defendants post false allegations not because they believe them to be true, but because it was an excuse. Now you're impugning their motives. So here's where it gets really gross again. We're going to get into the causes of action and what they actually claim. And again, it's going to be more of their stuff that works against their own statements. So we're going to go to cause of action, count 1. After a night of partying, she allegedly asked FBI agents on the security detail to escort a friend home, and that it occurred in the spring of 2025. They assert it's false. She does not even consume alcohol. Okay, hold on. The AD of Public Affairs, she doesn't even drink. Okay. She very rarely drinks, if ever. And then we're down here to the cause of action where they say she does not even consume alcohol. Well, which one is it, guys? Does she not consume alcohol or does she consume alcohol? And it makes you wonder, does she write stories about alcohol? Are there pictures of her accepting what I assume is money? This is a Instagram post. Real country is Bush Beer country. Thanks for the country gear and the beverages at Bush Beer, Bush Light, Bush Latte. This is Alexis Wilkins on her Instagram post holding a 24-pack of Bush Beer. Would someone get the impression that this is a person who doesn't drink at all? Who rarely, if ever, drinks alcohol and certainly would never be caught in public? What? This is from Alexis Wilkins' page, not mine. She doesn't drink alcohol, allegedly. And yet, thanks for the beers. As she holds a box of beers above her with her face open. She doesn't even consume alcohol. So I guess she's lying to the people that want to drink Bush Beer. She's a fake. This is a problem when you start doing stuff like this. Your public persona and your real life, like somehow they're going to have conflict. And if you're arguing that your public persona is one thing, but like what, that doesn't have anything to do with your real life. Somebody was telling me this is like Hulk Hogan saying that there's a difference between Hulk Hogan and the man that's behind Hulk Hogan, that Terry was not the same guy. I mean, I guess. She doesn't even consume alcohol, and she didn't have a security detail when they claim it. Maybe. Let's get a little bit further. This is where it gets really funny. Falsely claiming that Miss Wilkins is abusing FBI resource subjects her to public hatred, contempt, and ridicule, and it injures her in her profession. This is where it gets the best part because she's not a public figure, but as a Christian, as a country singer, an author, and a political advocate known for her Christian, patriotic, America First, pro-law enforcement values, her brand Do any of you have a brand that are not public figures? Ask yourself this question. And her ability to work in her profession, which, by the way, is singing, writing, and political advocacy, per their own sentence, damages her to her employer, her publishers, her listeners, or her readers. Do any of you have a non-public appearance where you have listeners and readers? Like, I'm a public figure. I would accept that. If you came after me for something I said, I'd be like, if you said something that you didn't like, that I didn't like, well, I'm a public figure. What am I going to do? And do you know it to be false? Probably not. You don't know me. They believe that to act like she was abusing public trust and her relationship with the FBI director. What they're claiming is that apparently she has so much power over the FBI director. And this is per their sentence, not from mine. This is me just reading what they said. They're falsely claiming that she's abusing FBI resources and that subjects her to hate. That actually implies that she has the ability to abuse FBI resources because she has enough power over the boy who is her friend. Well, that might be the showstopper claim of all. The boy who is her friend has to listen to her. And she has the ability to even to abuse FBI resources. No, I think what it says is that FBI director is abusing resources on behalf of the girl who is his friend. That's the real claim, and you can't sue for that. All right, the defendants published things that they knew were lies or reckless disregard for the truth about the security detail, blah, blah, blah. The FBI denied it before the publication. Again, they said they had sources. I'm sure they do. The defendants knew this. Defendants published these lies notwithstanding that knowledge or in the face of on the record refutation from the FBI. Again, this is what it's all about. You refuse to publish the official story and get in line and do what the government told you to do. So therefore, we're going to sue you. And we're going to sue you based on you hurt Alexis Wilkins' reputation. And we're going to make it look like that when in reality, we're just mad that you're hurting Cash Patel. They operated with a slanted purpose and not objective fact-based journalism. Are you not allowed to have a slanted purpose in media? Oh, you are. It turns out you are. They are driven by partisan desire to undermine the leadership of the FBI, the administration of President Donald J. Trump, and to self-promote the defendant's notoriety. Also, not something you're not allowed to do. You can have all the worst motives in the world, like the motive of this lawsuit seems to be. All right, we're going to keep going because there's a couple more in here. She suffered actual damages to her reputation, her standing in the community, and personal humiliation. These damages were foreseeable. I'd love to know what they are. She continues to do the things that she does. She still gets to sing the national anthem everywhere. She still gets to run around and get invited to these events.
Hey guys, I'm Alexis Wilkins. We are here at the Aria Fan Zone. Let's take a look at what's going on.
Bang, a punch. Cool music and people walking around and signing things. And this is a budget version of UFC. And she gets to sing the national anthem all over the country. Dudes throwing punches. Tough guy talking, music. Yeah, so there she is. So she's out there running this game. Okay, roger that. We're going to get back to the last little pieces here. The fun things of talking about no drinking and that there's no public persona. She's not a public person. Keep scrolling through here. Count 2. False light invasion of privacy against all defendants. All right. Defendant Delanian even felt the need to tell the FBI spokesperson in the text messages that there is no reason this lawsuit should have ever had access to because these were text messages between a government spokesperson and an independent reporter from a news station, whatever, told the FBI spokesperson that just to be clear, no one is saying Alexis was drunk. Oh, so he's clarifying that they weren't actually pointing out that she was drunk at that point. But he didn't feel the need to point that out to the MS Now readership. Well, he just said it. No one said it was. And more importantly, they didn't explicitly say she was drunk. So you're now taking what it was implied or what someone might read into it. This stuff is so weak. Defendants recognize that their framing carried the implication, the penumbra of her being intoxicated, and they included it anyway. And this portrayal was false, and they knew it, and therefore they should know, even though Miss Wilkins doesn't even drink. They say it again. What was that again? She doesn't even drink. Why is she selling Busch beer if she doesn't even drink? Let's keep going. Miss Wilkins' professional identity. Let's get into what this really is. Okay, this is what it's really about here. Her professional identity. The same professional identity, I think, that has, what do they have? The professional identity that sings songs about drinking whiskey that makes you dance and tequila makes you talk. Her professional identity is that of a responsible, sober young woman who does not partake in the excess drinking culture and party scene that's typical for musicians. Tequila gets me talking a little too much, telling all my secrets till the sun comes up. Wine makes me cry till I fall asleep. Beer don't do me quite like Jim Beam. Whiskey gets me out on the dance floor. Her professional identity, which involves singing that song, is that of a responsible, sober young woman who does not partake in the excesses of drinking culture and the party scene. She just needs whiskey so she can do some dancing. And she doesn't want to do tequila because she'll tell you too much. They're willfully and intentionally, wantonly and maliciously, with the goal of harming Miss Wilkins or in blatant disregard for the substantial likelihood of causing her harm. Their false portrayal of her is that she was drunk on some night, even though she sings songs about drinking until she starts dancing. What are we doing here, guys? Seriously. What on earth are we doing? The other thing is she owns a freaking whiskey company. This is Alpha Whiskey. It's a domestic for-profit organization under the laws of the state of Tennessee. It was filed for business. It was applied for on January 31st of 2020, and it's currently listed as an active business under the Tennessee Department of State. It was officially filed under 0010766673. Its principal offices are located at Alexis Wilkins' address. How do I know that? Because it was very easy for me to find it. If you guys wanted to find it, you could find it as well. These are public things. And when you look up Alexis Wilkins' address and you find it on the web, what you'll find is that it's blurred out, probably for her own security and safety because she has an FBI security detail. They blur out her address and the pictures of her house. But what they didn't blur out is that her pickup truck is in the driveway, and it's a very distinctive two-tone red and like yellowish white or red and beige 1989 Ford truck, single cab, of which she's pictured regularly on her Instagram because she's a regular girl who just happens to own a vintage truck that was made before she was born. The principal office is located at her house. The mailing correspondences can be sent to her house. The registered agent on file for Alpha Whiskey Incorporated is Alexis Lee Wilkins. She's the sole principal on record and serves as the agent and is associated with the address that is her house. Her next report is due last month. She owns a whiskey company called Alpha Whiskey. But remember, she has nothing to do with alcohol. She rarely drinks alcohol. She never drinks alcohol, but she rarely drinks alcohol. She owns a whiskey company called Alpha Whiskey that's registered to her home. Like so many people that don't drink, she also owns a whiskey company. This is from Bizopedia. This is a completely legit story. And you won't see it reported somewhere else. Most likely. You can look it up with the Tennessee, what are they called? The Department of State from Tennessee. Feel free. It's up to you. This is public information. Look, Banal Law Group, if you guys want to go out and file lawsuits on behalf of someone who owns a whiskey company claiming that they don't drink and that they don't have anything to do with alcohol, when they sing songs about whiskey and own whiskey companies registered to their home. By the way, her home is valued at $1.45 million, according to Zillow, which is kind of a lot of money. And you think that somehow she's been materially damaged by a story that says that the FBI director ordered a detail to give Gal's girlfriend, the pal of his girl who is his friend, a lift home. Our chat is now discovering that that is in fact a legit website. Of course it is. I'm not telling you something that one I looked up. I didn't spend very much time doing it yesterday. It's pretty easy to find out. So how do you claim that you're a non-drinker, never drink, while you're advertising on behalf of beer companies, while you're owning a whiskey company, and you're singing songs about drinking, and everyone's supposed to know that if someone were to think that you had a friend who was drunk, that's how defamatory to you? This is weaponized government, guys. This is somebody taking the resources they have as a government official, having their subordinate give information over to the attorneys so that they can push forward a lawsuit against somebody to try to stop journalism. And it can be shitty journalism. I'm not a big fan of Ken Delaney stuff all the time. There's some of his stuff is garbage, some of it's good. His sourcing is probably pretty decent. I'm sure that this is legit. Why? Because I know people in the FBI. And this is the stuff that I was hearing about starting back in June, July of last year. Over a year I've been hearing about a girlfriend detail, literally called the GFD. And people worried about whether or not they were scoped in their duty, because it's not a duty of an FBI agent to go and run around and move some girl who is not materially related to some guy who runs the FBI She doesn't have a connection. So there you have it. That's crazy. And here's the other crazy thing. Let's just leave it at this. None of this stuff would be that big of a problem if, and only if, the Trump administration was doing what we thought they were going to do. But instead, what we're going to get is amnesty. We're getting people like this guy, Mark Wayne Mullen, the scapegoat. I'll bring it all back together. When you have the scapegoat telling people that he doesn't even know the people that went before him that were doing the actual work that people really wanted them to do, doing the mass deportation moves and trying to push that forward. When you have the guy that's now in charge of DHS saying this stuff, you're going to have a real problem. People are not going to be happy with you. You could get away with a certain amount of corruption. You can get away with a certain amount of malfeasance. You could have a little bit of tone deafness. If you're getting a win, if they're getting wins left and right, people they give you a lot of leeway. But you're not going to get leeway because you're kowtowing, it seems like, to what Israel wants you to do and what the prime minister of Israel is. And your only response is some tough guy swear words. This is not the win that they think it is. This is a terrible look. This was a terrible PR move that the DHS secretary made, talking about Greg Bovino, who was the commander at large of Border Patrol, who joined Border Patrol in 1996 when Mark Wayne Mullen was graduating high school. While Mullen was wrestling in high school, this man was joining the Border Patrol, and he's going to say, yeah, I've never heard of him. And more importantly, he's irrelevant.
And one other question.
Yes.
Former Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino has been critical, saying...
I never met the guy. I never met the guy. No, he's irrelevant to me. I don't know who he is. What else, guys?
What else, guys? Well, let's move on. Well, who is he? He's this guy. He's a guy that actually understands, who actually gets what the mission was and knows that there was a bunch of people who voted for quote unquote MAGA that wanted to see mass deportations. And he was trying to get it done from what I can tell.
All right, Gregory Bovino, your name became well known. You're at the center of the discussion on deportations and the American immigration system this year, last year. Where do you think that went wrong in terms of how it was communicated to the public that this suddenly became, such a controversy that was used to attack the administration you were in?
Sure. Keith, well, first, thanks for having me. And over the past year, those operations that we conducted there in the interior of the United States, we had public support for those operations. 90% of the public that we came into contact with on the ground in all of those cities, Minneapolis included, were in support of the operation. And I think that with that amount of support, that there were negative connotations associated with those operations is a bit vexing. But I think when you have an out-of-control news media, leftist news media, that just wants to spread lies and not the truth, then that always hurts the effort.
Right. Well, we've seen polls consistently that a majority of Americans want all the illegals deported, which obviously would go, well beyond the scope of even what we were witnessing there. So I was wondering, do you feel you were stifled by forces in the administration that were out of touch with that segment of the American public that obviously elected Donald Trump just to do that? Or was it just a general kind of buckling under pressure to the media?
Sure, I think it was specific elements there in the administration. Not everybody's a border security professional, and I get that, and I accept that. Not everyone can be a border security professional and understand the nuances, understand the operations and what goes into an effort like that. However, those individuals, if they don't know, then they should rely on the expertise of those border security professionals that have spent decades and decades actually performing these missions and training for these missions, developing strategy so that these missions can be successful.
And one other question.
Yes.
Former Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino has been critical, saying...
I never met the guy. I never met the guy. No, he's irrelevant to me. I don't know who he is.
That seems like kind of a problem, doesn't it? You don't know who the guy was that retired roughly the same week that you came into office, and he was spearheading it, and he was national news pretty much every single week for the entire first year of the Trump administration. Mullen came in March, I think, of this year, and that's when you had Bovino retired. He went from 1996 to 2026. That was his time doing the job, and he's irrelevant, and he was the commander at large for your Border Patrol that actually does this mission. Yeah, you got an issue. The good news is we're not going to get amnesty, right? We're totally not going to get amnesty. We're not going to get a bill called the Dignity Act that's being pushed by guys like Mike Lawler, who in fact has been endorsed by Donald Trump, who Donald Trump went out and campaigned on behalf of, who is talking about doing amnesty.
For decades, the presidents have agreed the U.S. must crack down on illegal immigration. You saw Democrat and Republican, right? Now lawmakers are trying to turn that shared goal into policy. At least one is. And hopefully Democrats will flash back and understand they used to agree with this. It's a bipartisan bill known as the Dignity Act. It promises tougher enforcement and worker protections while offering certain undocumented immigrants legal status without citizens
Amnesty.
if they pass background checks, pay taxes, and stay employed.
Amnesty.
Supporters are calling it reform, while critics are calling it amnesty.
Yep.
Let's ask the Republican New York Congressman Michael Lawler, who co-sponsored the bill, and Democratic immigration attorney Michael Wilds, who is the immigration attorney of Melania Trump. Welcome to both of you guys. Great to see you. Tell me about the Dignity Act. Expand on it, Congressman Lawler. And is there other Democratic support for this?
Yeah, Brian, this has broad bipartisan support. In fact, this Congress, we have added significantly more co-sponsors than last, because I think folks do recognize that we have a problem. Immigration has not been reformed since 1986, the year.
So I just saw a video where President Trump is claiming that Thomas Massey votes for men and women's sports and votes for transing kids and all of this insane garbage, that the president is unfortunately lying about Thomas Massey. And here's a quick story for you guys. I thought this was worth sharing. President Trump is going this week, actually, to Mike Lawler's district in New York in support of Mike Lawler. Well, here's some facts. Mike Lawler hated Donald Trump, hated him when he was running for president. Used to make fun of him all the time, mocked him, would come up and make fun of me for supporting the president. Well, I thought you guys should know, if you really want to know about voting records, it was Mike Lawler and 3 other Republicans that voted no to my bill, Protect Children's Innocence Act, that actually makes it a felony to perform gender-affirming care on children, anybody under the age of 18, which, by the way, is one of the president's executive orders. It's a big deal to President Trump. Well, Mike Lawler voted no to my bill, which is taking a hard stance against President Trump and his executive order. And Thomas Massey voted yes for my...
We're working on legislation right now, Susie, right? We're working on legislation right now where farmers, look, they know better. They work with them for years. You had cases where, not here, but just even over the years, where people have worked for on a farm for 14, 15 years, and they get thrown out pretty viciously. And
oh my God,
we can't do it. We got to work with the farmers and people that have hotels and leisure properties too. We're going to work with them, and we're going to work very strong and smart. And
we're going to make sure that we get amnesty for the people that are in the businesses like Donald Trump's family is in, and also people that are in the big agricultural lobbies that are trying to make sure they can have cheap farm labor. And we're going to make sure that we get amnesty for those people. There already is a migrant worker program. You can already come in from Mexico as a migrant worker. You just have to leave. You don't get citizenship. You can't vote. And have we gotten election security? No. Matt Van Swole was going back and forth with one of the representatives, Salazar, I believe. Is that who we're talking about here? I think that's what he's talking about. Yes. He's going back and forth with Maria Salazar, who was talking about read the Dignity Act before you start calling it amnesty. So here's what he says, and this is pretty interesting. And I ran a little fact check in AI to see if it was right, and it sounds like he is. He says, so I did exactly what he asked. I sat down and I read all 261 pages of your bill. It supports mass amnesty, and I'll tell you exactly where. Pages 162 through 170, the DREAM Act. You grant constitutional lawful permanent resident status to illegal aliens who have continuously been in presence in the United States since January 1 of 2021. That seems pretty recently. Entered before the age of 18, meet educational, employment, or military service requirements, and pass a criminal background check. At the top of this, in sections 2102B3B, DACA recipients also get fast-tracked to conditional green card status, which is literally mass amnesty, but the bill goes even further. On pages 207 to 217, you present the Dignity Program. It's a separate track for illegal aliens who do not qualify for the DREAM Act. If you're an illegal alien who was continuously present in the United States Since December 31st of 2020, you pay a $1,000 upfront restitution fee, submit biometrics and pass a background check, and you have to have no felony convictions. Not committed felonies, by the way, just convictions. After completing a 7-year program, paying $7,000 in total in fees, staying employed, and obeying laws by paying back taxes, we will grant you dignity status, which is a lawful non-immigrant status, renewable any number of times for work and travel authorization. That sounds a lot like amnesty too. It means you're going to get legal status to be in this country. But the most important bit that you're hiding is that this is totally suspends deportation of anyone who qualifies for this. In other words, if you don't apply for these statuses, but you would qualify to apply for them, you cannot be deported under the Dignity Act. This would effectively end all mass deportations in the United States immediately. You're a liar, you're a fraud, and everything you stand for is fake. Did you read your own bill? Because I just did, and you're a liar. That's what he says. That seems pretty reasonable. Well, let's go here and run on the fact check, because I just said, hey, are these claims accurate? And what it says is the bill's dignity program for broader undocumented populations present since late 2020 offers a 7-year deferred removal work travel authorization after a $1,000 upfront fee plus ongoing payments, $7,000, taxes, compliance. It deters receiving renewable, non-lawful immigration, also known as dignity status. It says proponents call this earned legal status with no citizenship path. Critics label it mass amnesty. This is the same thing you're hearing from Fox News, kind of presenting both sides of the story as though there are. It turns out Republicans are the ones who are championing this. If you think we're not going to get amnesty, if you think we're not going to see that soon, like that's what they're slowly walking their way up to. And that's why you've got Mullen doing that garbage. That's why you have that weak push. It seems like a real problem. It certainly seems like a problem to me. It's not what I voted for. It's likely not what you voted for. It's the kind of thing that gets guys like Sean Ryan to say a bunch of profanity. I don't think he's wrong. All right. It's June. It's June 2nd. We skip June 1st. What we thought is maybe I would find you a way that you could be proud of your own heritage. If you're a heterosexual, there's no heterosexual Pride Month. Guys, if you are heterosexual, screw it. Hit the like button. Rumble, YouTube, etc. Guys, follow us over on KyleSeraphinShow.com if you have not done so already. Should we do a JP Sears? He does a pretty good job with this. And then I actually have something truly and actually uplifting, and it's related to heterosexual pride. Go figure. I actually found palate cleansers unrelated to the rest of the stuff, related to current events, and they actually will make you smile a little bit. I think it's pretty good. Let's do, what are you proud of about being a dude who's into women or a woman who's into dudes?
I'm hetero. As a heterosexual, this is the month that everyone should recognize and celebrate my sexuality, which has always been a fantasy of mine. It's kind of hot. What do I take the most pride in? My values, my accomplishments, my morals, how I treat people. No, I take the most pride in where I stick my penis. Women. I think vaginas are terrific. Yes, I think corporations should do special hetero logos for this month. I mean, it's their job to make me feel sexually validated. And if they don't, I'll take my business elsewhere. Okay?
That's right.
As great as this month is, some people don't like to celebrate. They're like, oh, sexuality is something that should be expressed privately. Well, public displays of sexuality are a real turn on for me, and I need to use other people for that, with or without their consent, because it honors my bravery as a person. Yeah, I just live a few houses down. I have a penis between my legs. This is locked. Sexuality is the last thing that should be private. It's not that hard to celebrate Hetero Pride Month. All you have to do is ask yourself, how can I sexualize everything I do? It's appropriate. This is the month to be loud and proud. Last night I told this lady, I'm hetero, like, aggressively. Vaginas are just where it's at for me. And she was like, I'm just trying to sell you Girl Scout cookies. And I was like, how can you when you don't know this about me? So she started crying and I was proud. So empowering.
Hey, how's it going, neighbor?
I'm aroused by women. I honestly don't understand why some people have to be so heterophobic and not be interested in my sexuality this month. It's like when a guy goes to a park and exposes his private parts to a stranger. What's wrong with that?
I'm I'm gonna make it my goal. I don't know if I have the moxie to do this, but it's gonna be my goal that the next time somebody says something to me while I'm in my front yard, like if I'm mowing my lawn and someone's like, "Hey, what's up, Kyle?" I'll be like, "I'm aroused by women." I just want to yell that at someone. I'll let you know how it goes. I'll come and tell you as soon as I do. You guys want a good news story, something that's sort of positive and actually feels kind of good to hear? This is the crazy thing. This is a heterosexual story in the middle of Pride Month. Here's what it is. My wife sent this to me and she goes, "Isn't this great?" And I go, "Actually, what it tells you how simple it is." The story is essentially a guy marries a stranger. She's not a stranger, though. They auditioned to find out who she was. They were going to get married and divorced. They went to Las Vegas to get married, and then they stayed married. It turns out, this is my argument for you during heterosexual Pride Month. If you're a man and you're dating a woman and you share the same values, you want the same things out of the future, and you're generally attracted to that person, why don't you get married and just make it work? The way you make it work is you get to know that person. Again, the old rule was go build your fortune, make this thing, come back and win the girl, like whatever, like kind of Count of Monte Cristo style. How about you do this? How about you decide to just be a dude who builds something with someone that you share the values with, that you're attracted to, and that you want to have the same future. And then you'll figure it out as you go. Like there's a lot of evidence that this actually works. This is a good little sort of nice story where it can actually work.
Go back to when this random guy made a TikTok saying he wanted to get married to a complete stranger, but he never expected to get hundreds of DMs from girls who were actually down. This was back in 2021 during COVID, and since Gunnar Michaels just thought people took life too seriously, he said he would pay for everything, including flying the girl out to Vegas and the divorce right after. He figured maybe a few people would reach out, so imagine his shock when he actually received almost 1,000 DMs from different girls who were genuinely interested. So after holding a sort of tryouts where everyone submitted videos introducing themselves and then FaceTiming each of the finalists, Gunnar finally decided on this particularly enthusiastic girl named Danielle, who had even made a whole TikTok convincing him to pick her. Since Danielle just so happened to have a converted ambulance, the two actually ended up taking this sick road trip across the entire US together. Just 1 week after Gunnar met her, he proposed. And after becoming friends with this random dude at the Grand Canyon and making him his best man, Gunnar finally got married to Danielle in Las Vegas. But although the plan was to break up literally right after, Gunnar didn't realize how expensive divorce was, so they just kind of held off on it. Despite tons of people in the comments saying things like, "Definitely don't see a spark, seems more like a friend vibe," and "They're definitely breaking up," Gunnar and Danielle just kept on traveling together and becoming best friends. And today, more than 5 years later, they're still happily married, and they actually just moved into their own apartment together.
Weird how that works. You could just find someone, find out that you get along pretty well, have a week or two of conversations and find out that you have a similar idea for what the future should look like, realize it's super expensive to get divorced, and then just make it work. And maybe she's like an interesting person that has a ambulance that you want to go travel around in, and maybe you get some random dude to be your best man at the wedding. Are these people explicitly Christian? Doesn't seem like it. That doesn't seem like a Christian move. And yet, I bet you they would get there. And if they end up having kids, this is kind of how you get there. It still can happen. And this was in 2021. This is a recent story, and they're still apparently married. What a great story about how it could work out. I will say that in a lot of ways, that's kind of what my marriage would look like from the outside. You'd be like, those people look like friends. It's like, yeah, that's my best buddy. That's my buddy that I would skin you for if you try to get on the wrong side of her. But like, we're buddies. We have similar interests. I tell her that I'm going to buy another gun. She asks me if one is going to be enough. She doesn't like guns, but she understands what I'm into. She tells me she wants to mill flour. I ask her what's the most expensive machine, and I go get her the most expensive flour milling machine. Like, it's not that hard, turns out. It's not that crazy. And then we both look every day at our little kids that are running around who are completely nuts, including a person wearing a tracksuit. I had a 2-year-old come up this morning with enormous blue, wide eyes, telling me how much she was trying to capture frogs to let them grow up in her room with her. And it's like, this is what we did. This is what we're doing. People used to do this. This is not crazy or exceptional. And meeting for a week, she wasn't a stranger, it turns out. She was a person that they had enough time to figure out, what are you into? What do you want to do? What kind of stuff do you like? Hey, let's make this thing work. Anyway, if you're thinking about doing something like that, if you need a ledge, like a push off the ledge, just do it. Like, get married and have babies and raise cool people. And then just commit that you're not going to go anywhere. No matter what, sometimes it'll suck. Sometimes it won't. You can do it. We need to do more of this as men. We need to encourage men to jump off the ledge, because otherwise we're going to get outbred by all the evil stuff. God bless all you that are thinking about it. God bless all of you that are on the fence, that are praying for the right answer to this sort of thing. And I hope you get married. And if you are married, congratulations. You're doing it. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be more interesting and bad news. There's still good things happening out there. There's regular people doing regular things, living their lives. So that's encouraging for me as we sign off.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.